like to ask Pastor Fred Walters from the New Life Church to furnish the invocation, please.
If you would, bow your heads. Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to be here. Lord, we thank you for our many blessings. We thank you for all the many freedoms we have and for the opportunity to serve you daily. Lord, we ask that you have continued blessings and protection for all of our various leaders, national, state, and local. Lord, we ask the blessings on all of our first responders, the policemen, the firemen, and all those that protect and serve. Lord, we especially ask that you protect our military as they fight for our freedoms. And Lord, thank you for all the many veterans that have gone before them. Bless us now, Lord, as we enter into this meeting, that, Lord, we would ask and seek your will and seek your direction. And Lord, we just ask you to bless us and guide us as we do your will for this community. It's in Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Councilwoman Karumba, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Karumba.
Here.
Councilman DeWitt.
Here.
Councilman Slakta. Mayor Simmons.
Here.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Forbes.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Public comment on agenda items. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on agenda items only, please?
Good evening, Rick Steinmeier, 37-year resident of Bonita Springs, lifetime family here in Bonita, paying taxes for 67 years. City of Bonita Springs, 6A. The city of Bonita Springs will be in debt forever. By the time the debt's paid off, the asset that we borrowed the money for is worn out, and again we'll borrow the money. This is the way cities do it. I'm familiar with this. That just never get out of debt. Whatever they borrow the money for 20 years, in 20 years they got to redo it again. So I see with our current situation, even with the low interest rates, it's going to cost us $4 million to pay off our debt. What could we do with $4 million? It seems like a waste to me. The debt, it reminds me of the little Johnny and Mary sitting out on the park bench, and Johnny's trying to get a little feel. He grabs Mary. Oh, no, don't do that. He said, well, I want what I want when I want it. And Mary said, well, you get what I got when I get it. So we've lived without all these borrowing for a long time. We can live without whatever we think we need right away. We can save the money up and pay for it. 6D, I was pleased to read this, that if you join a faith-based community, you live 14 years longer. So if you go to church, even a synagogue like Audrey's, and you can live 14 years longer. And then if you dedicate yourself to a purpose in life, such as working for the Lord, am I allowed to speak in this?
Go ahead, Rick. Sorry about that.
And if you dedicate yourself to God and have a purpose in your life, you live another 7 years. So you're looking at 21 years longer lifespan. What a deal. 7A. Are the new, it's on the gas tax, are the new lanes on Imperial Parkway considered being counted in with the way they figure the gas tax money? How is that figured? Because it's figured on the amount of lane miles in the city. 7B, tool design. I think it's time to talk to the Angler's Paradise developer about the road that we may connect Windsor with US 41. 7G, we talk about the facade, the stuff the incentives or the subsidies that were given to the businesses on Old 41. They are also, because we give them the money, then they can't sell their properties. So in other words, it's socialism. I don't care how you want to call it. Maybe you're old enough to know what socialism means. Business pay for their own problems. If they want to, go away if you don't like it. 11B, Attorney Pritt. Now he should know about the possibility of the road between Windsor and US 41, which goes close to or on the developer's property that it's on the agenda. 12A with the water tower. If you look at, you can't put concrete against wood because then it'll rot. But if you look at these houses with the barrel tile roofs on them, they have a vapor barrier underneath them called tar paper, and they don't rot. We should have put a vapor barrier underneath, and at the skate park, I understand the same problem. 12B, I have a list of, these are the checks that the city's written in the last quarter of last year. And there's a number of checks written to persons, like Meg Wise, Michael Gibson, Laura Taylor. Now, is this taxable income to them? Matt Feeney, Richard Ferrara, Frank Lyles, Alana Henry, Veronica Leary. I don't know why the city's writing checks to personal employees. Maybe they're buying something and then being reimbursed by the city, but it looks kind of funky. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Charlie Strader. I'm current president of the Bonita Springs Historical Society and former chairperson and member of the Bonita Springs Historical Preservation Board of the City of Bonita Springs. And I don't have any good jokes for you. Really don't want to go into philosophy much other than the word attitude. And I want to first publicly thank Councilperson Mike Gibson for bringing for discussion, get the ball rolling, so to speak, about the demolition delay. Long story, but it relates to attitude. That and that this council and staff went out of its way on a historical resource such as the water tank shows this town that we're proud of downtown. Things weren't always the same in this city. I had to do a lot with trying to get a CRA, and you have to call an area blighted, and some of us go way back and remember there were some reasons, but people were very concerned. This is showing the public that you care about your historic district, and it's for real, and it's something we should all be proud of. So thank you for your time on that. The only other thing is on the water tank. I definitely concur with staff's opinions, and no, it doesn't sit on concrete. It sits up off the ground. The only caveat I would add to their recommendation of selection 2 is whatever you do at the top, make it last. In other words, if you want to make it look like the old one, great, go ahead and finish it off that way, but build you a roof that's going to last another 40, 50, 60 years, whatever. It can be done. But thank you, council people and the staff. Both of you went out of their way on that project, so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Good evening.
Good evening. This is the first time I get to say this with the new council. Mr. Mayor, council, fellow Venetians, Jesse Purden for the record. I wanted to talk also about the water tower. Charlie was awesome on this. There's some other people that he mentioned additionally. Carl did a lot to make this happen, but additionally I wanted to give public shout outs to Fred Forbes, Mike Gibson, Peter Simmons, Greg DeWitt, my former opponent and now good buddy, for making the calls to get this to happen, because the reality was this thing, it was a Hail Mary. You guys saved it with a Hail Mary. Now we're in the 10. We're in the red zone. All we got to do is save it. You guys have the ability to do that tonight. My option 2 is really what I think would be the best option. I agree with staff 100%. I agree with Charlie. You guys saved it. You're almost there. Just vote that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We're revisiting an issue. I was here on the last council meeting in regard to the
Could you just
residential-
pull, I'm sorry for folks at home or in the audience. There you go. Thank you.
I was here last council meeting for the paving of the roads off of Paradise Lane, and we got a response to that. I think it's been tabled back that this is per Carl. It said that he thanked us for the meeting, and unfortunately, council took no action which would allow the project to go forward of the paving of the private roads. We've had this project in existence for over, 3 years? You've been talking.
Decent, yeah, 2014.
The previous assistant city manager, John, I'm going to say his name wrong, Giacardio, I think is what his name is. I know that's not right. Had already proposed the road to be paved, and we got set back due to issues that the paver had, as far as a family member dying. And had that not happened, we would have had the project go through. So we're a little concerned. We talked to our representative, Mr. Peter O'Flynn, and he feels like it got oversighted. And we're hopeful that, it will be readdressed, because it is an issue. I've actually got pictures last summer. I mean, you can't even egress the road with the rain. And unfortunately, we don't have a good way to remediate it as neighbors. I mean, we could put down slag, but it's not gonna solve our problem there. And we don't have the resources of $22,000 to pave it ourselves. So we're asking, that this would really be looked into. I know it's not a big issue in the big scheme of things, but it is when you live on a road like that. Of course. And the safety issues as well. As far as egress, you've got the waste management trucks coming through there. You've got FedEx trucks. And it's not just a 1950s road anymore. It really gets a lot of usage. And so we're hopeful that council will take a look at that. Mayor, we appreciate the time. And if there's anything else we can provide, I do have the contract. I did give that to, I did provide that last time, but this is the contract. So
Thank you. Will you leave that or a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Jean Bear, and I, along with Betsy Ventura, are here today seeking approval for a market that we've been hosting for the past couple of years at the Promenade. So I just wanted to introduce myself and will be available to answer any questions should you have any. We're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to proclamations and presentations. Great, thank you. Carl Schwing, come on up. It's not on the agenda, Carl, sorry.
Yeah, I know. My staff did me in.
5 years, brother.
That's right.
Well, this is 5 years of service presented to Carl L. Schwing. As of the 6th day of June 2016, in appreciation and recognition for 5 years of public service to the city of Bonita Springs, signed Mayor Peter Simmons, Bonita Springs. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for this surprise. It's been 5 years. It doesn't feel like it's been 5 years. It's been a wonderful time here in Bonita Springs. I cannot say enough about already our new council and the magnificent staff members we have here. You may not realize it. We have such a great staff here. I'm just privileged to be able to be city manager in this city. My wife and I love living here. We love being involved in the community. We love the improvements that we continue to make in the community, and I look forward to another 5+ years. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And if council, if we could gather around here, council, for a picture with Carl. That's yours, Carl.
Oh, thank you.
That's for you. Are we good, Laura?
Yep. On 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1 more.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Okay, now we're going to move on to the rest of the agenda. Item A was a presentation of the first annual loan principal and interest payment by the Bonita Springs Wonder Gardens.
Get we have 100% of our board of directors here this evening, including Councilman Gibson and Wright. Here we are. You don't need to get.
Everybody needs to shift in here.
So,
Maybe
on behalf of the Everglades Wonder Gardens Board of Directors, Bonita Wonder Gardens Board of Directors, the city took a chance on us last year for saving the Everglades Wonder Gardens, and we are so blessed that this past 12 months, if you've not been there, if you have been there, we've been doing a lot of work over at the gardens. And the folks that you see right behind me have been working all year to help us raise the money to pay back our first payment, which we are here tonight, $578,246.58. This is our first payment to the city of Bonita Springs. This is also a, hey, happy anniversary. What a great anniversary present, Carl, right? Yeah. Yay. But without the support of the community, our donors, and especially our board and our executive director, Janet Martin here, we really could not have done it without everyone. And, you know, it will be a catalyst for the downtown area. We have a lot of plans up for the next coming year. And, I should take this off. We have a lot of plans for the upcoming year. And, you know, keep watching what's going on. If you're not a member, please get a membership with us, because that's what's going to continue to support us. And I just wanted to say thank you again, and thanks for all the support back there. Carl has the checks, okay? The real check. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Go back.
Fred, come on over.
We did one with the council.
Yep. Where's Carl?
You want me in?
Yeah. You're the creator of this.
Okay, on three.
Where we looking?
Okay, which one?
All right, everybody look over here.
Look over Laura.
On three. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to take a bunch because we have a lot of people. So smile. Let me go over here real quick.
Smile, Fred.
He is smiling.
He is happy.
All right, on three. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Miss Jackie, how are you? Thanks so much. Great job. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for all you do. Appreciate it. Good job. Thank you for everything. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, no, that's great.
Thank you, Wonder Gardens team. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to item B now, which is a presentation by the Lee County Emergency Operations Center on hurricane preparedness and shelters.
Hi, good evening. Frank Cassidy, Director of Neighborhood Services. I'm your liaison for the Emergency Operations Center. Hi, here to proudly introduce Rob Farmer, who is the Director of Lee County Public Safety for tonight's presentation.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
How are
Council-
you?
Fantastic. Yourself?
Great.
Good. Council members, Mr. City Manager, congratulations. I wanted to touch base with you this evening to briefly discuss your role as elected officials in hurricane response should we have a storm this season. Again, my name is Rob Farmer. I'm the Director of Public Safety for Lee County, also the Director of Emergency Management. With me, I also have Jim Biostad,
Welcome, Jim.
who is our Chief of Emergency Management and runs our daily operation. Essentially, what I've done is I've taken a storm event and broken it into 3 sections, and kind of what your role is in each of those sections. The first is when we're seeing a storm forming, whether it's out in the Atlantic or approaching from the Caribbean. What we are doing is very closely monitoring the storm. This time of year, it's remarkable the number of emails we get per day talking about every little twitch in the weather out in the Atlantic. So we watch these weather patterns very, very closely and are always monitoring for activity. Anytime we see anything starting to form, we watch it very closely. Last year, we had the opportunity to have what we like to call an unplanned exercise named Erica. And that was a storm that formed pretty rapidly and had a pretty good shot trajectory towards southwest Florida. So we took it very seriously and did put a lot of procedures in place preparing for the potential for an activation and preparing for a potential landfall. So about 7 days out is when we start very closely watching these weather patterns and watching to see where approximately they're going to go. We're getting weather reports from the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center out of Miami a number of times per day, as they're also very closely monitoring them. Once we start seeing something that has the potential for a landfall in the southwest Florida area, or even that may land on the Atlantic coast and create a cross-peninsula storm, we start preparing for an activation. An activation is simply moving city government to the Emergency Operations Center on Ortiz. We start preparing, start briefing at least once a day. For Erica, we had 7:30, 8 o'clock meetings every morning with our entire public safety leadership team, as well as the emergency management staff. We also invited the county manager, his staff, and commissioners in on those meetings. When we're getting close to preparing for a landfall, we're going to start drafting what we consider here in the county that state of local emergency. That state of local emergency is what allows us to start spending and activating certain assets in the case of an emergency while we prepare. We will start evacuation considerations, deciding based on forecast what type of evacuation we may need to facilitate, and we start working with some of the other county agencies on suspension of tolls, suspension of Letran fees, and start locking swing and draw bridges throughout the county. 3 to 5 days prior to landfall is when we're going to most likely pull the trigger for an activation. On Erica's case, on Friday, we pulled everyone that would respond in to the EOC Friday afternoon to prep to tell them that if it continued its current track, expect an activation sometime late Saturday or early Sunday morning. Thankfully, we didn't have to do that. Thankfully, Erica dissipated over Hispaniola, and we did not have to worry about that. Should that continue, should that storm track continue, we're going to initiate decision-making activities and initiate what we call our decision-making process for evacuations. The primary factors of those areas that we decide to evacuate are based on surge probability. Wind speed plays a part of it, but the most important thing we're evacuating for is potential storm surge and forecasted storm surge. We start activating our special needs clientele, alerting them, letting them know what's happening, and start moving them, if necessary, to a special needs shelter. I will recommend all of your residents in Bonita Springs that if you are not registered for the special needs registry and feel you should be, that's someone who has a medical necessity, dependent on electricity in particular, to register with Lee County Emergency Management so that we can come get you should there be an evacuation. and we will take you to a shelter that will support your medical needs.
Director Farmer,
Yes,
if I interrupt.
Please.
When you talk about going to get them, you're talking about well in advance, not the
That is
day
correct.
of the storm.
that is
just to let
correct.
you know
We are
that.
still at the 3 to 5 day,
Gotcha.
3 to 5 days out. Thank you. If necessary, we will be opening general population shelters. One of the things that you will see in this year and the coming years is more pet shelters. Right now, the county has one. We're working very closely with the Lee County School District to establish more pet shelters. One of the number one reasons people don't evacuate is because they can't bring their pets with them. So we want to provide more opportunity for that so that people are more inclined to evacuate when we call for it. At a certain point, we will be closing county government. I will be working hand in hand with the county manager, who will be at the emergency operations center at this point, and to together make the recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to close county government. And shortly following that, schools will close. And we start preparing for response for after the storm. At this point, as Frank said, we have, for example, Frank sitting in the EOC with us. So your liaison to what's happening in the Emergency Operations Center will be that liaison. That's how you will be communicating as the elected officials for the city of Bonita Springs in and out of that Emergency Operations Center. That person, that liaison, will be your point of contact for what's happening, what decisions are being made, and where exactly we are in that process. So this is the Lee County evacuation zone map. This is something that we can certainly, if you don't have our hurricane guides here in your city council or in your city building, we will make sure that you have plenty to distribute to your residents. This is a public map that we want people to know about. We want people to know what zone they live in. As you can see, much of Bonita Springs, where the most population is in a B zone. We do have a few small A zones down along Bonita Beach Road and out onto the islands. We do have 4 shelters established in South Lee County, obviously Alico Arena and Germain Arena, as well as the Bonita Springs YMCA and the Estero Rec Center. These are all established as shelters, but won't necessarily be opened as shelters. We will open the number of shelters necessary for the amount of evacuation that we're doing. So what we want people to understand is at the time of the storm, pay attention to the media, social media, and other outlets like what your information you're putting out from here at City Hall as to what shelters will be open at that time. Okay?
I
Yes,
have a
ma'am.
question. On the zone map, did that say 2013? Hasn't that been revised?
No, we revised this data based on surge modeling from the National Hurricane Center.
So it hasn't been revised?
That is correct. That is correct.
I thought-
And a lot of the surge inundation modeling, we are getting better surge inundation modeling product from the National Hurricane Center, but these maps have not yet been updated. If I overlaid what the actual surge was, it would very closely resemble these zones. These are what we call our geographic divisions. Obviously, the city of Bonita Springs is in our South Lee geographic division. What these are is small EOCs that are established throughout the county by predominantly the fire divisions, the fire districts around the county, staff them, and operations after the storm, operations around the county are coordinated through these geographic divisions. So we're communicating directly with them and preparing for the post-storm response through these geographic divisions. After the storm, our initial purpose is to begin search and rescue operations, and that is to get out, make initial assessments of damage, and look for people who didn't evacuate. One quick point of contention, we will not issue a recommended or suggested evacuation. We will only, when we issue an order, it will be a mandatory evacuation order. And that's for a number of reasons. One of the messages that we want people to understand is when there is an evacuation order in place, those areas that are being evacuated, during the time of the storm, we cannot respond to come help you. That's why we are issuing a mandatory response or a mandatory evacuation. When certain sustained wind speeds are met, police response, fire response, and EMS response stops. And during that time, if you call 911, maybe not just because your roof blows off, but maybe you have chest pain, or maybe you're injured some other way or ill some other way, we cannot respond until it's safe to do so for the responders. We will put you on a list, and you will be one of the first people we come look for once it's safe to do so. Again, our initial damage assessments begin throughout the county, looking for the level of damage so that we can start reporting to the state and potentially to the federal government for disaster declarations as much as necessary. We will begin what we call first push debris removal through the Department of Transportation. They will be out clearing primary roads, doing, again, what we call that first push that allows responders to get out and assessment teams to get out. This is not yet the time where we tell residents that they can start heading back to their homes. We know that we can't control that completely, but we really try to encourage folks to wait a little bit until we can get a significant amount of the debris off the road before we start allowing them back into their residences. We will be opening, if necessary, points of distribution. This is where we distribute food, water, ice. A lot of those supplies come down from the state level. And slowly, power and utility will begin to be restored. They establish a priority list. FP&L and LCEC establish priority lists. We have those priority lists in the Emergency Operations Center. It's things like hospitals, the Emergency Operations Center, places that need power first before they get to the residences. So that priority list is followed very, very closely by those utility companies. And then we start allowing what we call life safety mitigation. That is, if you're going to blue roof your house or do some initial repairs to make it livable, those are allowed. It's not until the third phase, which is the recovery phase, that cities and municipalities in the county as a whole start to require permitting for emergency repairs. Again, we try to start working with the public to get them back into their homes. We try to get schools back open as quickly as possible. We try to get the businesses back in and open. An old habit of FEMA from years ago, which is to distribute free water and free ice from a Walmart parking lot, is no longer acceptable in our shop. We want to make sure that we encourage businesses to be open and available for the residents of your community, because it's just important to us to get people back in their homes as it is to get those people back into your community's businesses. Obviously, we want to get the schools open quickly, because as soon as we can get the kids back in school, people can start to resume a normal lifestyle. And if necessary, if we have any longer-term damage, this is when we start looking at any type of housing plans. Wrong direction, sorry. Any other questions I can try to answer for you this evening?
Rob, thank you. I just
Sir.
had one about the Y. You know, there's a history with the Y
Yes.
going back. And I thought a year or two ago there was an issue with the county where, because of storm surge, revisions of storm surge numbers, that was no longer deemed to be appropriate.
Again, it depends on the level and severity of the storm. Something like a smaller storm surge that would only cause the evacuation of the A zone, the Y would potentially be an okay solution.
Okay.
It's going to be very specific to how much inundation we get or plan for. Obviously, we're going to leave a significant margin of error to make sure that if the surge is worse than expected, we're prepared for that. So that may not be one that we choose in one that requires quite a bit or inundates quite a bit of surge.
Right. And my recollection is the last time we had kind of a real event.
Yes.
It was quite a trek. It turned out not to be a real event, but it was a threat of one.
Mm-hmm.
And the nearest place open to Bonita was pretty far up north, South Fort Myers, perhaps. I can't really.
Okay.
Yeah. What about Collier County, which is, you know, geographically right over our border? Do you work with them? Is there a potential there if that's closer?
Absolutely. All of our evacuation planning is done now on a regional level.
Okay.
We recognize that Lee County can't, in a vacuum, evacuate and not put into factor what's happening to the south and to the north of us.
Right.
Obviously, we want to work as a region. All of our planning now is done on a regional basis, and that includes not just evacuation planning, but transportation planning. contraflow plans with the freeways, that type of stuff is all now done at a regional level, so that we know we're all on the same page and we know what's going on with each other, and we're pulling the trigger for those things at the same time.
So where would we be likely to go, other than a minor event, which the Y would be okay for? or
Sure.
relative?
Well, again, we would work with
Right.
Collier County if they have spaces open. We're working with the school district currently, so when there is a new school here in South Lee County, that we'll be working with them to assure that it has the capability of being a storm shelter.
Okay.
That's important to us, that
Right.
we do have more spaces available in
That's
South Lee
helpful.
County.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Council, Fred?
Yeah, one question I have. We've primarily talked about hurricanes and all that. Do we have a really good plan for if something happened, whether it was man-made or an act of God, where we had to, like, for lack of a better word, get out of Dodge in a hurry to evacuate Bonita? Do we have something where it's all planned out and we know how many officers it's going to take and what intersections and all that to
This
direct
time
them?
of year, our offices are very popular because it's hurricane season. All of our plans are laid, however, in what's called an all hazards approach. So they are designed for any type of emergency that could require evacuation, sheltering, recovery, any of the phases of an emergency. We have the ability to respond to and react to any of those crises. Whether it's a hazardous materials leak, whether it's a large brush fire, whether it's a tornado like we recently saw in Cape Coral. All of those options, all of those problems are part of what we consider our all-hazard approach to our planning piece. So the answer, much shorter, is yes, we do. We're always prepared. We just get a lot of attention this time of year because it's the start of hurricane season, and that's kind of one of our bigger focuses.
Mike? Okay. Amy? Greg?
I have nothing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah,
Could I ask a
Carl.
question?
Please.
Rob, thanks for coming down. We
Thank you.
appreciate that. Couple of things, going back to the why. First off, I want to make sure that it is the county's call to open that shelter.
That is correct.
If
And
it's gonna
that
be used.
shelters countywide, whether it's from Cape Coral to Bonita Springs to Alva. The opening, the decision of which shelters to open and when they're opened comes out of the Emergency Operations Center.
Okay. And if it is decided that the YMCA will be opened, the county either staffs it or arrange for staffing. Is that
Arranges for
correct?
staffing, that is correct.
And how is that typically done?
How we staff different shelters depends. I will plug at this point, it's a perfect time that the emergency management staff is always looking for volunteers because we have hundreds of well-trained volunteers that staff our shelters for us. We send them to training to become shelter managers and shelter operators to come in and work in those roles. So when we have an emergency, we have a whole roster of volunteers that are eager to get in and help us set those shelters up. Certain shelters in certain areas will be staffed by the Red Cross, others by the health department, special needs shelters as an example. So depending on which shelter it is and where it is depends on who and how it'll be staffed.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
If I can add one other
Sure, yes.
plug, at the Bonita Springs Rec Center tomorrow evening for the residents of Bonita Springs, we'll be holding a hurricane seminar. It's an opportunity to sit with with Haley Webb from the news media, as well as Lee Mayfield, who is our planning chief in the Emergency Management Office. They will be holding that hurricane seminar at the Bonita Springs Rec Center at 6 tomorrow evening, open to the public. Highly encourage all of your residents to attend.
Great. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Thanks for the great work you do.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on now to a presentation on potential funding options through debt restructuring. Hello, Ann.
Hello, good evening.
Good
Ann
evening.
Wright, Finance Director. I'm pleased to introduce to you, some of you may have met her before, Julie Santamaria. Julie serves as our financial advisor, and she's a director with RBC Capital Markets. And at Council's request, Julie will be presenting information about our potential options for debt restructuring.
I will have to say been involved in Florida municipal finance for 22 years, and I don't believe I've ever seen a city manager receive a standing ovation. And that is truly refreshing. And the joy in making a loan payment was just beautiful. I'm just stunned. Yeah, thank you, thank you. So I'd just like to start with...
Julie, could you just pull that microphone down a little bit? I just want to make sure
Sure.
everybody can hear you. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to start with an overview of current market conditions and the interest rate environment that we're in. This is just a snapshot of the yield curve, which is basically the interest rate as you go out each year when you're borrowing. So just like when you're borrowing a mortgage for your home, 15 years is going to be a lower rate than 30 years. And so that blue line is where we were last year at this time, and the red line is where we are today. So you can see that rates increased slightly on the very short end because of what the Federal Open Market Committee did, and they've come down overall on the long term, which is very beneficial. I'd like to just focus here, the easiest to see, this is over the past 10 years, this chart on the right. The tall blue line is the maximum rate over the past 10 years. The shortest dark blue line is the minimum, and that middle blue line is where we are today. So you can see we are very near the historical lows over the past 10 years. And one step further, over the past 37 years, our current rate is 3.54%, and rates have never been lower than 3.5% over the past 37 years. So if you choose to do a borrowing or a restructuring of an outstanding loan, it's a very good time to do so. It's very cost effective. So the city actually has very little debt. There's 2 bank loans. One is the Series 2014. That was for downtown redevelopment. That's at a rate of 2.96%, and that does have a make-whole penalty, so it's not currently callable without a premium. And what that did was lower our overall interest rate up front because it costs to have that. The Series 2011 note refinanced a 2001 Municipal Loan Council loan for debt service savings. That was originally a 20-year loan for the purchase of land and roads, and that rate is 2.21%. You can call that at any time without a penalty. And so I was asked to provide a couple examples, knowing that there's a lot of projects in the air or potential projects, and what a $15 million and $20 million borrowing might look like. And we typically see 2 structures. So we see a level debt service, just like your mortgage, where you make level annual payments, or at times we see a wrapped debt service structure where the principal is put out to the longer end to try to have an overall level payment when you're looking at your total obligations. So you see here, because of your existing debt service, where the 2011 loan drops off in 2022, your debt service goes down from $3.6 million a year down to about $1 million a year. Depending on whether you do a level or wrap, there's a higher annual payment in the early years, or you can bring it down slightly by doing the wrap structure. The wrap results in an overall higher interest cost because you're paying off the loan more slowly, but in a time like this where the long-term interest rates are near historical lows, it makes it somewhat attractive if you're going to look at that structure. The current CIP has about, what I could see is $3.6 million in stormwater projects that are right now being funded as pay-as-you-go. Another alternative to a bank loan or a bond type issue is the state revolving fund loan. And this is a low interest rate program by the Florida DEP. They are 20-year level debt service, and it would be for stormwater, wastewater. The rates are subsidized by the federal government, so usually they're about half of what a current market rate would be. And they do have other requirements like the Davis-Bacon, Buy American, and some additional requirements And they've bought down that interest rate even further because they understand there's a cost involved in implementing those federal requirements. So currently, the rate might be 1% for a 20-year fixed rate loan that you could prepay at any time. So one consideration would be you could look at, instead of using some of the general fund monies to do pay-go for stormwater, take a look at this low interest cost program that a lot of communities use, and then that would free up those general funds for other purposes. I know that Cape Coral has utilized it quite a bit recently on their special assessment expansion. I'm working with the city of Bradenton, and they said their loan rate was just quoted at 1%. So it's very attractive. I think the only better would be paying no interest or getting a grant. So, in addition, there's transportation. There's a state infrastructure bank. That program takes a little bit longer. I don't have that up here, but Ann and I were just talking about it as a longer-term potential funding source for the road projects, other road projects that you have. I understand with 41 and Bonita Beach, and that could be a really big project. But that cycle seems to take about 2 years through the application process. But it's something you could look at planning on. The 2011 note can be restructured because it is callable without penalty. The original loan was for 20 years, and it was for land and roadways. You could extend it another 10 years, which would make it a 30-year loan from inception, which is not unusual at all, and would be appropriate for those projects. And what that would do is take your payment down to approximately $2.2 million a year in the earlier years instead of the 3.6. So that would free up from now until 2022 about $1.4 million a year by lowering those debt service costs. And the cumulative funds would be $8.6 million until 2022. And that's when you would start paying more than you would have previously because you extended the loan. So again, the benefit is it provides you with cash flow flexibility up front, but you are having longer payments over time. And also, it would just be $1.4 million a year that's freed up, and depending on the type of project and your construction draws, those are other considerations. So just in conclusion, obviously there are benefits and considerations of debt restructuring and doing pay-as-you-go. The benefits of a new borrowing would be you're taking advantage of interest rates near historic lows. You could do a 20-year level debt service with a bank loan or take advantage of the state revolving fund program for stormwater projects. And you can also consider the state infrastructure bank for a project that might be 2 or 3 years down the road for roads. The consideration, of course, is an increase in city debt or extending that current debt that you already have. The restructuring, again, it would provide you with some cash flow relief, and that would be $8.6 million through 2022, but then your payments would increase over what they would have been if you would have just paid it off as it is now. And the construction draw amounts and timing, would that provide sufficient funds? And right now, we don't have a project amount that I'm aware of that we're looking at, so that would need to be vetted. And then the city could consider a combined restructuring and a smaller amount of new money to kind of have a compromise between those. In terms of pay-as-you-go, obviously, if you have a lot of cash available and limited amount of projects, it's certainly the least expensive because you're not paying any interest. However, what we often call intergenerational equity is that all of your current taxpayers are paying for that project now. So the taxpayers that would be using, let's say, those roads 15 years from now would not be paying for that. It would have already been, they're not paying for that share of at least that project. So, and that's it, if there's any questions.
Council?
I guess my only question is, Julie, real quick, you talked about the all-time low being about 3.54, but it looks like on these two loans that we have now, we're below the 3.5 now, correct?
That was for a 30-year interest rate.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, even the shorter term rates are very low as well.
Okay. And then I guess my only question, if we go to restructuring it, would there be a prepayment penalty on that one loan? The Series 2014? Because right now, you said if we went to pay it off, there'd be a prepayment penalty.
Right, and so that's why we would not look at restructuring that one, only the 2011.
Okay.
Yes, because it is significant prepayment penalty.
Gotcha.
Amy?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, okay.
So, you've said this, the downtown's got to make whole, forget it. We can't, that's prohibitive. So we're dealing with 2011. And the action on that is on the last slide? That's for your,
Yes.
right. So there's a lot up here.
I know, sorry.
No, that's okay, but I'm trying to figure it out. So the principal amount due on the 2011 is $16,584,000.
That is the total debt service,
That's the-
principal and interest.
No, I don't, well, I'm looking at the second page.
Page 5, I believe.
Yeah. Page 5, correct.
Okay, so the
Has it at.
total debt service is the 15 million, the principal amount is 12.3.
I'm looking at the wrong, which, the Series 2011 is the downtown?
No, that's
No.
the 2014.
All right, that's the one we should be talking about, right?
The 2011 is what
Is the one we should be talking
Yes.
about. All right, so page 5 has the principal at $16,584,000?
Yes.
Okay. So your 2016 is your replacement for that?
That's correct.
Okay. So why, just for apples to apples, why wouldn't, I'm just trying to understand, so why wouldn't the principal be 16,584? I'm just trying to understand.
This is just showing the total principal and interest. Here, it's not, it doesn't have.
Well, that's principal and interest, where it
Yeah.
says Series 2016 on this slide?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes. I don't have it broken out on this page
gotcha.
because there would be even more
I
numbers
gotcha.
to look at.
Oh, I got you.
Yes.
All right.
But I can provide you with that
No, that's fine. So the 17,968 is total debt service?
Yes.
Okay. Which is more or less the current total debt service on the Series 2011. That's 17,898.
Right.
Yeah, within 30,000.
So this basically takes what are, in the next 7 years, annual debt service payments of $2,000,005, and it brings them down to $1,000,001 and change.
Right.
Okay.
But extends out another.
And and
Yeah.
extends it out, and that's how it does it. Right, Greg. So, and what's the implied interest on this?
This I assumed an interest rate of 2.8%.
Okay, and what are we paying on the current?
2.21%.
All right. So even though the yield curve is lower, so the yield curve must have been even lower in 2011, or no?
Well, we're extending it another 10 years.
It was
That's-
duration. Oh, all right,
it
you're
was
paying
much-
interest for more time.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
It was much shorter
Right.
loan.
All right, well, that's interesting.
I'm glad you find it interesting.
Yeah.
Not many people do.
So, now the stormwater projects, our biggest stormwater project is the downtown project, already funded.
Mhm.
But the debt does not cover the total cost of that project, not even close. So, that's 1% money? That's slide 7?
Yes, the state revolving fund.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yes, right now, it's approximately 1%. It is based on demographics. There's several factors that go into it, and because you would have to be subject to a Buy American, Davis-Bacon, and some other administrative requirements, they reduce the loan interest rate. So let's say if it would normally have been 2%, because of these other requirements, it brings it down to 1%.
All right. But that's not some kind of floating rate, that's 1% now? It's fixed?
It's fixed.
Okay.
It's It's a great program. It is.
So if we're going to refinance somehow, that's where we should be looking first.
It's only for new money projects.
Only for new money?
Yes. Right.
All right, let's.
Now, if.
Can't be repay, huh?
If the downtown project could be divided into stages, perhaps you could fund a portion of it with a new SRF loan. We can schedule.
This is SRF?
Yes.
Yeah.
We could schedule a conference call and have more information because you have to have the loan approved at inception of the project, but sometimes there's projects and stages where you could
Okay.
consider a new loan.
So this is a great presentation, but those are the two places we should be looking, right? If we're going to look, anything
Well,
else?
so you have bank loan, which is usually limited to a 20-year final maturity, and
Right.
there's pretty few that will go out that long. And if you have a wrap structure, the banks generally will not do that. You'd have to go to a bond issue.
It's got to be syndicated.
Or it would, actually, it would be a publicly offered bond.
Right.
The city doesn't have any of those outstanding. I know Ann's done many of them before, and they involve a lot more work because of the rating agencies and the ongoing continuing disclosure requirements that the SEC requires these
Right.
days.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have the state revolving fund program and then the state infrastructure bank.
Well, I would just make a suggestion, Mr. Mayor, that we look into this more. This is not new debt. This is a replacement of the old debt.
Right.
And it would free up cash, significant amount of cash each year. Something to think about.
Right. Yeah, I think it's something to look at because do we need the cash? I mean,
I think we're
I
gonna-
don't want to
Right.
stretch it out over 10 years if we're not cash
Couldn't
strapped
couldn't
right
agree
now.
more, but I'd be shocked if we didn't.
Right.
All right. But then stormwater would be like what? It would be nitrogen reduction stuff? I mean,
Let's see, just in my quick review,
But that'd be for something
new.
beyond new than the downtown redevelopment area.
Unless,
maybe on
unless
this.
the staging thing works.
it looked like stormwater master plan implementation, Spring Creek restoration.
Yeah, okay.
uh,
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Abernathy felt stormwater,
Yep, we had that in.
sidewalks
Regular paid
drainage.
for, paid to
Sometimes
go.
asphalt overlays can be included if they're torn up because of the stormwater improvements. They will allow for a portion of that to be paid by the SRF, the state
Okay.
revolving fund. And I don't know if all of those would meet the criteria, but that's just what I
Understood.
identified loosely.
Fred?
Well, and you can also apply for those loans, as we know, these alternate routes, because there's going to be storm sewer with all these new road things we're talking about.
True.
So you could borrow that at that good rate of one. You can't beat 1%.
Julie, could you do it as a master plan? Like, say we had a master plan to do so many linear feet of stormwater drainage over the next 10 years. Could you anticipate that loan and get the loan now?
I believe you could. They have planning loans
Okay.
and pre-construction loans. Sometimes it's phased, and they'll
Okay.
only release certain amounts.
All right.
But their funding cycle, they typically have 2 approvals a year, I think, compared to the State Infrastructure Bank, which seems like 1 a year, and you have to have it shovel-ready by a year later, or 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But we could look into that.
Okay. I think, any other questions or comments? I think those are the things to focus on, if we could, and come back. A little deeper into budget season.
I'll make the numbers shorter next time.
And smaller.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on now to item D, presentation of the Blue Zones Project of Southwest Florida. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. I really appreciate this opportunity to share with you tonight a little bit about the Blue Zones Project. My name is Deb Millsap, and I serve as the executive director of the project. And I know my slides are coming up here in a minute. But if you don't already know about the project, one, in an effort to be concise tonight and respectful of your time, you have a folder that has a lot of the information that I'm going to share. It has the slide deck in it. It also has some background information for you that allows you to dive deeper into the facts behind the project and the proof in the pudding, if you will. But also, if you haven't heard much about it yet, and I believe you have, it's a community-wide comprehensive well-being project, which involves everyone who wants to get involved. It is funded by one sponsor, which means there's no cost to individuals or organizations that want to participate in this project. It's completely funded. There are no mandates because there's no government dollars involved in this project, and it's completely voluntary. Why would we get involved in well-being? I know I don't have to tell anyone in this room that healthcare costs are crippling individuals financially, families, businesses, states, and the nation. We have to turn it around. If you look at the stats on here, in the United States, we spend 18% of our gross domestic product on healthcare and only 3% on education. And yet France spends 7% and 7% respectively. We can do better than what we're doing. We should be doing as well as France is doing. We also know we have rising rates of chronic disease in our country, and it's not just our adults, it's our kids, which is even more concerning. And as a result of that, rising rates of chronic disease, we now have our youngest generation, which has the potential not to live as long a lifespan as their parents. That's unconscionable, and we can do better than that. So when we look at a community and look at Blue Zones Project, we look at all the different initiatives that are already going on, all the partners that are working in the community, doing great work already. And we look to how can we work together, how can we complement, and how can we bring what's unique to Blue Zones into the community to raise well-being. The goal is to help make the healthy choice the easy choice for all generations, and as a result of that, increase economic vitality and help people live longer better. Stepping back a second, just to mention Blue Zones. What are they? Blue Zones are places in the world where people live longer better. They have 10 times the number of centenarians who live long healthy, not just live to 100 in the last 10 years or in a nursing home, but they live long healthy. They thrive to 100 years of age, 10 times greater rate than the average American. And so in these communities, what occurred here is that Dan Buettner, a National Geographic researcher, and longevity experts from throughout the world looked at these places where there were more centenarians. They did thousands of interviews to find out what are the secrets to people living longer better. And one of the things that we want to keep in mind when we look at longevity is that our zip code matters more than our genetic code. Genetics plays about 20% of the role of how long we live and how healthy we live, and yet 80% is really where we live and how we live. As Dan Buettner and researchers were looking at what helps people live longer, healthier, these are the things, and there is a handout in your folder that goes over these in greater detail, but these are the types of commonalities where people live longer, healthier. They have the opportunity to move naturally. They're not auto-centric like Florida has been built with. We have to jump in the car almost always to get somewhere. And so a couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to hear your visioning project for Bonita Beach Road with Ian Lockwood, and I have to say, kudos to you for looking forward and trying to make a difference. Well-being depends on whether or not we can move around safely, enjoyably, and in a healthful way. Also, knowing purpose, downshifting, people live longer, healthier, they de-stress better than we do. You can guarantee they're not tied to their iPhones. They also eat sensibly from the aspect of that they have more of a plant-based diet than the average American. Doesn't mean they don't eat meat, just eating more plant-based foods in their diet. The bottom part of this, I think, is most critical, and that is the foundation for well-being, and that's social support. We know that, based on Framingham research, that loneliness kills. Loneliness is as dangerous as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And working in health all my life, public health, that's astounding to me. But that's what the research is finding. So they have found that the average American had 3 very good friends just 2 decades ago. Now we have 1.5. And that's considered lonely by their standards. So how do we help communities adopt what these places where people live longer, healthier, help people get more socially connected? We know a lot of people come to Southwest Florida and they leave their friends from somewhere else, or they lose a spouse after they moved here. How do we help with this? One of the things when Dan Buettner, when they were looking at the research for where people live longer, healthier, he was asked, okay, this is great. I'm not going to move to Sardinia, so how could we implement this anywhere USA? So he and longevity researchers looked at common health models. What have we been doing to try to move well-being, to try and reverse chronic disease? And they find that most models deal with focusing on the individual. If I educate you enough, if I guilt you enough, if I incentivize you enough, you may stop smoking, or you may eat healthier, or you may start walking. But although that's really important, we recognize that it's the environment around the individual as well that impacts whether or not people make the healthy choice. Someone recently said, it's almost like recycling, what's occurred over the years with recycling. If I have a water bottle and I walk up to a place where there's only a trash can, chances are most people are going to put that water bottle in the trash can. If you add a recycling bin, people will have the opportunity to make the healthy choice. That's what Blue Zones is really about. How do you add choices versus take them away? So we know by the research that that all of us make on average 250 health decisions a day. Most of them are quite unconscious. It's, toothbrush is sitting at the sink in the morning, we brush our teeth. We learn that as children. We get into the car, we put the seatbelt on. But I think we can all remember when the seatbelt was just an extra part of the car. Now it beeps at us, and so we put it on. There's lots of decisions like that all throughout our day. And in the Blue Zones project, we realize it's a life radius, meaning where we work, play, learn, all impacts our healthy choices or not so healthy choices during any given day. So not only do we work with individuals and their own motivation to make the healthy choice, but we also work where we grocery shop, where we eat, in restaurants, workplaces, schools, faith-based organizations, homeowners associations, and then policy. You're well aware, because of built environment, how important policy is. We also know food and tobacco policy is important. Tobacco policy is an easy example. What we've all seen in our lifetime with decreasing incidence of tobacco use, just because of small but continual policy changes that made it less acceptable. That's one of the greatest gifts we've given to the younger generations, is to make tobacco less acceptable. Now, the good news about Blue Zones Project is we are not the first kids on the block. We can learn from the communities that have gone before us. Blue Zones Project is now in 26 communities throughout the country, and the good news about that is we have lots of best practices and research that we can implement right here in Southwest Florida. I should mention that our service area for this project is all of Collier County, Bonita Springs, and Estero. That's the service area under our contract. How do we do this? We get everyone involved. We invite everyone to the table. It is a we project. The more that we collaborate with everything that's going on in the community and all the interested people who want to make a difference, leave a legacy perhaps for generations to come, the better. So we work with the grocery stores, the schools, restaurants, faith-based organizations, homeowners associations, work sites, and community policy, as I mentioned. What does this really look like? For example, when we work with the different sectors, they get a little pamphlet. It's about 10 pages. And they are all best practices of what that sector could implement to help make the healthy choice the easy choice and raise economic vitality. I mean, it's not just about pleasing the customers or the employees or whatever. It's also about the bottom line and economic vitality. So in a grocery store, this is Wynn's Market, but we also have Mr. Como looking at this very seriously for DeRomo's, not only for his grocery store, but for the restaurant, for the worksite. In a grocery store, they can opt to put in a Blue Zones checkout lane so that our impulse buy, when we're really hungry and dashing through that store, or we have grandkids that are crying for the candy bar at the end, our impulse buy can be something healthier. They also an example again, of wins, we know that food marketing targets children. It targets all of us, of course, it's a business. But with children, they like us to put the unhealthy food or unhealthy cereals at the bottom, the Captain Crunches, etc. But at Wins, they made the choice to put them on the top. So if a parent wants to choose that for their child, fine, but at least the kids aren't constantly marketed by that bottom aisle. They also have sections in the store that you can go right to that are called blue zones, and you can get healthy food options without even having to think about it. A restaurant and an idea that is put into place there is just to simply decide to have fruit as a default item instead of chips and fries. When we were kids, what came with the sandwich? Usually a piece of fruit. It'd be really nice if kids started to think about that again, that with my sandwich comes a piece of fruit. You can always get the fries and the chips. The choices don't go away. It just makes this choice an easier choice. This happens to be the dock in Naples. What they've done, they added a healthy menu that goes in conjunction with everything they've always served. So they haven't taken anything away. But now they have some plant-based items that are selling really well. And they also have a children's item that is not chicken McNuggets or mac and cheese, so that they can, kids can start to think about other options as well. In work sites, one of the things we bring to the table with the work site is what's called the Wellbeing 5. It's a health risk assessment that includes the well-being piece. We all know physical health is very important, and a lot of HRAs or health risk assessments measure that. But we also measure emotional, financial, social well-being, and it's to the individual, and you can get the aggregate data if you have a workplace of at least 25 people. So we offer that for free, and several other options for work sites to have or to implement. We also work with schools, so we have in the packet, we have great ideas, best practices for the principals, the teachers, the parents, and the students to take a look at and see what works for that individual school if they want to get involved. And so one of the things we do is we work with schools to create walking school buses. Most of us had the opportunity as kids to either walk to a school bus or walk to school. And by doing that, we had the opportunity to add 3 miles of exercise into our day without even thinking about it. So we moved naturally. Today, a lot of kids don't have that opportunity. So they get SUV'd to school, and they got all this energy, social and physical energy, built up in them, and then they're expected to sit down and learn. When we work with a walking school bus, we get chaperones, often grandparents or parents, stay-at-home parents that are interested in doing this. They volunteer to make a difference, and it's quite successful. The kids get the 3 miles of exercise back into their life. We also, as I mentioned before, to address the loneliness issue, we work with building walking groups and potluck groups to help people get better connected. Community policy aligns with what Ian Lockwood is doing with your community. Looking at what is your interest, what is your vision, and how can we make that happen? We bring in national experts for built environment, tobacco, and food to provide expertise to you. You tell them what you're interested in, and we share, or they share, and you can choose to pick the options or not. This particular expert is Dan Burden. He's worked with Ian Lockwood on quite a few projects, actually. They're good friends, and he's got a knack for educating workplaces, businesses, as well as leaders and community members about built environment. We understand why it's so important to health, but not everybody does understand that model. So he's very helpful at doing that with the community. And we bring that consulting to your community at no charge to you. You know why the focus on built environment is so important. Again, these are in your slides. And I put these in your folder. I have 2 infographics back to back. These are a really fun way to look at what built environment does for our health, how it can impact our health. And so I thought that would be helpful as a resource for you. Not that you're not already a believer, but sometimes sharing these facts can be really helpful. Central Avenue, just sharing with you what we did in Naples with the built environment. They were looking at a stormwater project because of flooding, and with the Blue Zones project, we looked at complete streets as well as that stormwater project and helped get them the community will to make that happen. So they didn't necessarily spend a lot more money as much as when they went in to do the work with stormwater, they also decided to go with complete streets. So now they have a connection from the Gordon River Greenway all the way to the beaches. Okay, as I mentioned before, what you expect with these types of projects is increased performance for employees and workplaces, increase economic vitality in your community, as well as increase well-being and longevity for generations to come. The proof is in the zones. I'm not going to go through all the details on this. It is in your packet. On the right-hand side, there's two back-to-back handouts that give you a lot of facts on the communities that have gone before us. And you'll see things like dropping the rate of smoking, decreasing healthcare costs, increasing walkability and usage of pathways, as well as decreasing weight, cholesterol, etc. And you can't measure or you can't manage what you don't measure. So it's really important to us in the project that we do measure along the way. One of the most important things that we do is we use Gallup Healthways polling. And as you probably know, Gallup Healthways polls individuals throughout the country every day, almost every day of the year, and they get a snapshot of well-being throughout the country. What we do with the project is we oversample the communities that we work in. So last May, a year ago May, we oversampled every zip code in Southwest Florida to see where the baseline was. I do have a copy of this in your packet so you can see it better, because we've got the Bonita zip codes on there. The green means a sense of higher well-being, the orange lower. This gives us an opportunity throughout the project as we oversample this on a regular basis to see where we need to continue to work, where we need to add more resources along the way. And finally, why do we do this? Again, economic vitality, very important to all of us, but also this lady right here is 103 years old, and she's holding her great-great-great-grandchild. Wouldn't it be great to thrive and hold our great-great-grandchild? And we know that when kids get to meet their grandparents, when grandparents get to spend time with their grandchildren, everybody thrives. The kids do better in school. Everyone does better from a health standpoint. So it's a reason for us all to get together and work on the project. I thank you again for your time and to learn more about the project. I also thank you for your support. Because of you, your Vice Mayor, Mr. O'Flynn, sits on our steering committee. He sits with 17 other leaders in the community throughout Southwest Florida to guide this project, and we can't thank you enough for your investment in doing that with us. So my card is in the packet. If you have questions, I'll answer them now, or you can call me at any time.
Great. Thank you, Deb.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Council?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, great presentation. You know, Deb used to live in Bonita, so maybe we can get her back here.
Very good.
And in Bonita Bay, we have, what is it? Is Tavira the first, what?
Absolutely. They're the first homeowners association in Bonita Springs to become Blue Zones approved or Blue Zones recognized, which means they implemented various well-being best practices within the condo to raise well-being within that community. Yeah, so that's the first, and we have several others popping up. Lots of interest in the community to do this.
Well, thank you for what you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Quick question,
Fred?
will you come to an HOA and make a presentation, or two or three?
Absolutely. We are here to come in anywhere you would like a presentation, like to educate more people about the project, get them involved.
Do you present it to the board, or do you present it to the members?
It depends how you would like to do it. Often we want to get the board on board first, but some organizations have said, let's get our members excited about it, and that will help drive our decision. So we're happy to do it either way. My card's in the book, and I'll be happy to make that happen.
You can count on me calling on you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Fred's very good on the telephone.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item 7, moving on to the consent agenda. Any items you'd like to pull?
I'd like to pull D, please.
D? D, E, I'm hearing E. A. A, D, and E. Any others?
I had a question about C, but I can just ask the question later.
Okay. We're going to pull A, D, and E. Is there a motion to approve the rest?
I'll make that motion.
So moved in a second. Roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Okay, Councilwoman Carumba, item A.
Well, I just have a question because when we were talking about this earlier, we had this issue about the date, and it was the same date. I just want to know what happened to it. Were we unable to have a contract be coincident with one of the other, Sanibel or something?
The issue was interesting. It related, you're right, the dates were different
Yeah,
for
yeah.
renewals. And what looked like the culprit was not the culprit. Cape Coral, even though it gets this huge number, believe it or not, as Ann pointed out, under the formula. Now, the formula is not set by anybody other than Lee County in negotiation. But applying that formula, which is based on road miles and population, even though Cape Coral gets $4,700,000, basically add this up, it's $8 million. On that formula, they're actually technically a little low. So they were the ones who were coming up soonest for renegotiation. I was concerned about most favored nation.
Right.
Yeah, but they're actually, even though they're getting a huge amount of money, are getting less proportionate off the formula. The interesting thing is the ones that are doing very well are Sanibel, which you can see proportionally, and Fort Myers. They're well above the formula, but they're not up till 2018? 18 or 19.
So the contract date that we have is coincident with that
It's
revisiting of the formula for them?
Yeah,
So-
more or less coincident.
So
It's
this is probably okay?
Right, right.
Well then,
Okay.
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
I can move A if you want.
Any other discussion on A?
I'm sorry.
Okay, do we have a motion? to
Make
accept-
motion.
We have a second? Motion and a second? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Okay, item D. I think that was, yep, sorry.
I just wanted to pull it just to comment on it that this is the 58th annual and it's the 24th one at the firefighters union been doing. So I just want to put a plug out there. I know there was a little bit of controversial, but we're working through it, and I think it's going to be a great day.
Great event, road closures, huh? Road closures.
Just
On
for a
July
little while.
4th?
Just for a community event.
On 4th of July,
We're
road
totally
closures?
fine with that.
Right.
I'm okay with it on 4th of July.
If Councilman Gibson would like to MC it, we can let him MC it because of the closure.
I'll pass. Thanks.
Maybe he can direct traffic.
Yeah.
Right.
He can have the, never mind. We'll talk about it
Okay.
later.
Any other discuss, Laura?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope. I have my next item that was pulled as well. So
Yeah.
we're looking forward to another great 4th of July celebration, and it'll be wonderful.
Great.
So I'd like to move that one.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye. Let's close those roads.
Aye.
All right. E. Mike.
Well, just pulling the local routes. I see they're switching from a green market to a flea market. I mean, my main concern is, basically the previous council, myself included, allowed a outside business, basically, allowed them to move in, and it basically put out our own nonprofit business. The Lions Club, ran a successful market for many years, but with the competition, they weren't really able to survive, and so we basically squashed a local nonprofit that really gave back to the community to allow an outside business to come in and run a market.
Well, I guess I'll jump in. Go ahead, Fred.
Well, piggybacking on that, I would make a motion that we delay this until the next meeting, and I would like to have somebody review the tapes, because my understanding is there was a compromise where the Lions Club was to get one of these permits and the other people get the other, and the one that the Lions Club was supposed to get is the one that's being applied for by these people. One. Two, that they agreed that they would get together with the Lions Club and help them do some events to offset their loss. And that, my understanding again, but I am a Lion, so that never really worked out. And so I'm with what Councilman Gibson has said, except even more. The Lions Club gives one heck of a lot of money back to this community. And they have offered repeatedly to pay more money to the promenade than these people are paying. So I think that all needs to be brought out.
Okay.
But I'd like to hear more about whether what I've said is 100% right, because if it is, I'm not going to vote for it.
Yeah, Laura, do you want to?
Absolutely. Just to give you a little bit of history, Mr. Forbes is right, Councilman Forbes. We did start to review these markets when the Lions Club was not, their lease was not renewed at the Promenade. The Promenade was purchased, and the new property manager decided that they wanted to have a different group come in and run the farmers market. At that time, council did ask us as staff not to go back and work with both groups to see if we could have the farmers market and with the Lions Club and Local Roots to operate on separate days. They delayed it for a year. The Lions Club did find another location, and they operated out of a different plaza on 41. During that time, they were operating outside of the parameters for a farmer's market, outside of the green parameters. The Local Roots group came back and applied again to have a farmer's market. We worked with both. The council at that time said, let's look at our farmer's market ordinance and let's work on amending it to allow a flea market ordinance to operate within the city. That was done. Staff did that. They brought it back. At that time, the flea market ordinance does indicate that 2 flea markets can operate within the city during 1 calendar year, and it can operate on Bonita Beach Road and Old 41 only. So if this was awarded to the Local Roots folks, the Lions Club is still able to apply for a flea market permit this calendar year. The property owner at the Promenade has issued approval to the Local Roots to run their market. At this point, that is not changing. Local Roots has operated there probably 3 years now. They're here if we have any questions. 3 years now. So we have tried to work with both groups, the Local Roots group and the Lions Club, to try to work together. They have talked about doing things together. I do not know that they have done anything in the last year as far as doing a charitable event, which they discussed last year. Council did approve a flea market and a farmer's market last year for both organizers to operate. The Lions Club did not operate the flea market at the dog track due to they started there and they weren't really getting the traffic, and I know that they have been operating at their location in Old 41, and they also have a farmer's market on Wednesdays that is operating annually. So we have worked as much as possible. The way the ordinances are written, there's nothing that we can deny their request. We're just bringing it to you. We will work however you would like us to try to work with both groups. In the past, both groups have indicated that they do want to operate on Saturdays, and now it seems that they do want to operate a flea market at that location.
According to the ordinance, both of them can operate on
Yes.
Saturday at 2 different locations within the
Yes.
Bonita Springs.
Mhm.
Have we heard anything from the Lions Club? Are they going to apply?
Currently, they are running a farmer's market on Wednesdays, and that is an annual permit. This is the first year that it was awarded annually. They hadn't applied before that. So the Wednesday market is still operating. We're not sure. We'll see how it goes through the summer. I know that some of their vendors have stopped going, but some are still there. And then we also have a market on Saturdays for the Lions Club that they operate, and that has to do with their zoning. So it doesn't require a special event permit to come through. This does not affect that at all.
Well, this is an ongoing saga, and it continues to be. I do agree with the notion that we'd wait and see and hear what the Lions Club has to say. It's a shame that these groups could not work together and, you know, come to yes on this stuff. And it seems like every year, at least as a witness before and now kind of involved, there's a lot of talk, but we end up with, you know, kind of two separate groups going their ways. But it would be good for everyone to work together, and I'd like to hear what the Lions have to say about it.
And just a question, because I thought before it was one natural market, one flea market. But if you're allowed to have two flea markets, is somebody else allowed to still have the natural market? Or, I mean, is it only two?
The flea market is, the farmer's market ordinance and the flea market ordinance are two totally separate things. The farmer's market ordinance, they can still come in and apply for a farmer's market. If both groups were to apply currently for flea market on the two designated roadways that are the 41 corridor and Bonita Beach Road, they could operate, and then another group could come in and apply for the farmer's market ordinance.
So we could have 3 or 4 things going on.
You could. You could have a farmer's market and 2 flea markets, and currently, I mean, you do have Local Roots has operated on Saturday, Lions Club has operated on Saturday, and then we also have had the Wednesday market, and then Farmer Mike, before he got with the Lions Club, he also operated on it. He applied for a permit on a Sunday, and he did a farmer's market on a Sunday. So.
Yeah, so I would second Fred's motion.
Yeah,
If that was a motion.
Yeah, I made a motion that we delay action on this item till the next meeting and hopefully hear from the Lions Club. And I want to make it clear that I'm not casting any dispersions on our staff. The situation has not been created by the staff or the city. So.
Great. Okay, there's a motion and a second.
Further discussion?
Any further discussion?
I just have a couple questions. One, I think, Laura, you made the comment that there's no reason to deny this, that we have no ability to deny it. Is that true or not true?
Council always has the ability to.
Right.
Okay,
It would
maybe
have to be ground.
Staff can't. My recommendation,
Okay.
they have applied for the permit. I need to bring it forward. There's
Okay.
no reason that I can't bring it forward to you.
That, and then I guess, and no offense to Councilman Forbes, but if he's a part of the Lions Club, should he abstain from voting?
No, as a member of the Lions Club, unless he receives compensation from the Lions Club, which I presume he
Okay, I
did
don't know.
not.
I'm just asking. I just
No.
don't want anybody
No.
to think anything
Right,
from Local Roots or anything, since he did make that
Just because
comment.
you're a member of a voluntary group, a nonprofit
Okay.
group, and you are not receiving any special gain or loss, and nobody in your family is compensated from the group, you do not have a voting conflict pursuant to Florida
I just want to make
statutes.
sure, put that out there. To make sure.
Yeah, and I'm a member of the Lions as well. Put that out there.
And I'm not advocating we're turning it down. I'm simply saying we're delaying deciding on approving it until we can hear at least the other side and what their version is and what has transpired between the two groups and where they plan to do it if they're going to do it.
Right. Okay, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Flynn,
Aye.
Councilman Gibson,
Aye.
Councilman Forbes,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba,
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt,
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye. Okay. Moving along to item 8, mayor and council member items. Item A is a discussion of upgrading property maintenance code for the Bonita Beach Road corridor, Route 41 corridor, and other major intersections along Bonita Beach corridor and the interchange zoning area. And this is Councilmember Fred Forbes.
Yeah. Basically, I looked at a property that someone may or may not turn in a application for development. And as I looked at that property, I became aware of some of the things that I think could possibly be improved. I know I talked to Carl, I talked to Audrey, our city attorney, and what I'm hoping to come out of this is that at least for that corridor, we have this vision, this wonderful vision that Tool has given us, which will be refined, and I'd like to see the property maintenance standards improved upon in those areas as much as legally possible. because if we're going to really make Bonita Beach Road into this beautiful boulevard, exciting, inviting place, we have to buck up the environment to the left and to the right. And so that's the whole purpose of it. Audrey one thought that I had, and I mentioned it to Audrey, and she thought it was a good one, was that we would ask the project manager from Tool to also look at our ordinances and give inputs, because they do work all over the state, so they may be able to make some good suggestions. And it would be as much as we can do legally to make things better as far as what existing properties along those corridors, including the interchange as well as Bonita Beach Road and the other ones that were read off. So that's simple.
I just have.
Amy, go ahead.
I have a question. I'd like to hear from code enforcement, AKA Neighborhood Services, because I did review the existing ordinances that we have, and it wasn't clear to me whether we could not handle this just with more diligent enforcement, or do, you know, these issues, some of the suggestions that, or examples that Fred gave, I thought could be handled with it, but I'm not that familiar with the entire ordinance, so I just would like your opinion.
Oh, hi, good evening. Frank Cassidy, Department of Neighborhood Services. Only one ordinance was provided in your green sheet today, and some of the items listed in there are covered in our ordinances, and we do enforce on a daily basis. For example, junk vehicles. You're not allowed to have a junk vehicle in your yard. Just having a sticker on it doesn't mean that it's not junk anymore. It has to be operable. It has to be able to move. So I believe in reviewing the request and speaking with Councilmember Forbes just this evening, that I believe you're correct. We do have other ordinances and other provisions that can successfully address the concerns once I get a better idea of a more directive idea of what we're talking about.
Would it be, be possible to take an inventory of these corridors that we're talking about and just have an inspection, so you could report back and say that, you know, we have 6 junk cars or whatever.
I'd be more than happy. I mean, we just did a window survey today.
Is that hard to do?
Yeah. I just did a window survey today along Bonita Beach Road just before the council meeting. I didn't see any junk cars, so that met the definition. Now, you remember, that doesn't mean that they all look good. Remember, on orientation, I told you that we don't regulate ugly. I mean, it doesn't. They might not look good.
And they're running and in working order? You were able to
exactly. You know, it could be that old 1967 Chevy Vega that's rusting out, but it's drivable and it meets the criteria. So I think that's some of the work we got. We also have we have the International Property Maintenance Code, which is pretty thorough, which you I don't know if you had an opportunity to review or not. It does define junk cars just for that says that just one criteria is whether or not it's licensed or not, but that's not the sole criteria. So I believe that we do have on the books already adequate provisions to try to address Councilmember Forbes' concerns, with a better directed effort and an idea of, for me, to get my head around what exactly we're talking about here. I think we could put together a program to address that more effectively.
Okay. Fred, go
well,
ahead.
I'd like to point out that I also suggested to Frank and to Audrey that we would huddle up and make the best of his thoughts, what we get from Tool, and even if, let's go 2 ways. Let's suppose that it's absolutely, there's nothing we can change, which I'll bet is not fully the case. We can ask Audrey her opinion on that. We at least can get more enforcement. And I'm not talking about cars, boats, anything that's stuff. And I don't want to go into where I saw some of these things, because I don't want to see an article saying, well, that area, and all that. All I want to do is see Bonita Beach Road be the best it can be within the law. And if we have to buck up some ordinances, Audrey's going to look at that. And the Tool people would as well. And I'd be curious to hear what Audrey thinks.
Some of the things that, first of all, the ordinance that was provided is one of the property maintenance codes, and this property maintenance code deals with properties that by default did not need a development order. Generally, your single-family residences. So they would not have the criteria necessary to fall into the Land Development Code, Chapter 3. Now, we do have provisions in that code that were added, such as, say, the dark skies compliance. So for single-family homes, they are required to be dark sky compliant, which is a step less than maybe the people on the beach for the sea turtles, but it does, prevent a lot of light pollution, which is an issue. Likewise, council could do things into the codes to beautify certain areas, but I wouldn't suggest doing it by enforcement alone, and I think Frank and I would agree on that. The proper approach would maybe look at things such as grants, looking at beautification awards. The department has done several things, neighborhood services, several things, some that require ordinance changes, but some that are not ordinance changes, that incentivize people to voluntarily improve their property. And that's something the council could consider also.
Sounds good to me.
Yep. Any other
No, I
comments,
just-
council? Frank, I was just going to say, you mentioned a 1967 Chevy Vega. They were in production from 71 to 77. Okay, 70 to 77, but model years 71 to 77.
I had a 77 Pinot, so
you let me know when you find that 67 Vega.
Right.
Did you a 77 Pinot? God, you gotta love
That's
those old
Google.
cars.
That's not all right.
Yeah. Well, then that would be junk.
Yeah, that actually would be priceless.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, for clarification, what is council's directive with regards to asking Tool to look into this as well? Is this something we can handle on a local level? You've just adopted an agreement indicating that we can spend up to $35,000, but is this something you want to spend for Tool to be doing that kind of work?
Well, I was proposing a simple conference call to get ideas. It may be that he may not even have anything, and then if we need to have them, we can always come back and amend their contract or whatever, if council so wants to do it.
So like ideas would be, well, gee, I know of these 5 towns that have similar things. Or is that necessary, Audrey, or you're okay?
I mean, I can look to see what I can find in other towns. I mean, a lot of times, it's not going to be something where I would find it based on ordinances. It would be other programs that are out there. And I think both neighborhood services, the planning department, or community development, and I can work together to find creative approaches that have been utilized by other communities.
Yeah,
But Fred's talking about
I do think we need
a
to
short phone call.
Yeah.
clarify what we're trying to accomplish here by doing a survey of some sort. So if it's one kind of problem, we could handle it in one way. If it's another kind of problem, we can handle it another way. And if it's just upping the interaction that neighborhood services has with specific landowners, then we don't need too many ordinance changes that way.
Yeah, I have to agree with Amy. It sounds like more of it's an enforcement if you and Councilman Forbes get together and he maybe points out this, and this, and now you come back to Audrey and say, well, we don't have an ordinance to enforce this, and this. Then I would say, let's go to Tool and use that money for that rather than
And it's
blindly doing it.
It's probably just as important for the council to say, this is our vision, and you can do things when we strongly feel we want those specific areas beautified, whatever that means, in quote, everyone has a different view of that, but I think council, I don't think anyone here would say we don't agree with the intent of what Fred Forbes is suggesting here. It's just how we do it.
I would say that, why don't we wait till the next meeting? I will get some pictures. I'm going to do it under attorney-client or something. I don't want to put pictures out because that right away puts a finger on something. But there's some stuff that's really not so good.
Well, that's what I mean. If you went around with neighborhood services and points
Well,
it out,
I can
I
get
think he
Frank
knows it
and
more.
I and Audrey can go around together. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to point out that some communities, I believe Miami Lakes is one of them, has mandatory on residential paint requirements. So a fresh coat of paint may be all that what Councilman Forbes is perceiving as creating a less than desirable or having better landscaping on some of the parcels.
There's most of what I'm seeing is more in the residential side. There are a few commercial properties that probably.
And generally, our codes do, we tend to look at private property rights as a man's castle. We don't tell him what to do at his castle that much. And that is legally, you can go a little stronger on that, especially if it's on a major charrette. But that's something that would be a council decision, whether or
Yeah.
not you think that's important.
And I
Road
think,
charrette.
and I honestly think if we don't do something, it's gonna just deter getting Bonita Beach Road developed. And because people see things like that, it's just a negative, it's a turnoff. That's,
I think we look at it and go from there. I mean, it may
Yeah.
just be an enforcement thing. Maybe neighborhood services
Well,
haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you, because I don't know what areas we're.
well,
talking
that's
about.
what we're gonna go look at together.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, good.
Quarterback, you're going to quarterback that, Fred?
I'm gonna focus on
You
it.
focus on it. All
I'm
right,
gonna
buddy.
drill on it.
Drill down on it.
Drill down on it.
All right. Any further discussion?
Not till next time.
Not till next time, okay. Is that more? Is that better, Carl? Yes, sir. Thank you. No, absolutely. Thank you. I think it's good for all of us. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Frank. Go find that 67 Chevy Vega. All right, buddy. 8B, Councilman Mike Gibson, discussion on the demolition delay.
I think there's an item that got slipped in an errata sheet, wasn't there?
Fred?
On the water?
That's next and next.
Okay.
But thank you.
Okay.
All right, buddy. You stay focused on 8A.
Okay.
Thank you, buddy.
I will.
Okay. This is discuss a demolition delay ordinance for properties not designated as historic, but may be quote-unquote recognized historic resource. Councilmember Mike Gibson.
Okay, well, Alex kind of wrote all this up, and I'd like to hear from him.
Sure, I can give an explanation. You had asked us to look at some past revisions. These were just drafted revisions. There were some discussions that council had. There was also some discussion that the Historic Preservation Board had. Ultimately, the board decided not to recommend this change, and this change is a demolition delay that applies to properties that aren't officially designated as historic. We have about 20 of those now, and those are properties that property owners came in, petitioned the board to get that designation if the board saw fit. This revision, which was proposed and discussed and that we're talking about now, would have also established a demolition delay, a maximum of 90 days, that would apply to any properties that the board unilaterally decided should be on a particular list of historically significant properties. Some other sort of characteristics, as properties also would have been 50 years old and been on the Florida Master Site File. That's an inventory that the State Division of Historic Resources keeps. So the biggest difference is probably there. It's that this is where the property owners don't come in and petition to be historic. This would be a demolition delay that would apply to these properties or resources that the board has unilaterally decided would be historically significant. I guess there are some potential relief valves for property owners who get listed. They can come in and appeal to have their resource removed. If there is a demolition delay, and just to be clear, this happens after a property owner would come in and to community development, to the building department, and ask for a demolition permit, and then the community development would forward that over to us as liaisons to the board, and then we'd go ahead and decide how to go forward with that. And if that were the case, there's some potential relief valves. Like I said, the second one would be that the board could seek a reduction or a waiver of that delay if they can come in and prove substantial, some sort of economic hardship. Legally, there's some concern, and this was brought up in the past. That concern would be that restriction on the use of property, whether or not that would open us up to Burt Harris claims, protection of property right claims. Burt Harris is when there's an inordinate burden placed on a property owner. The question is whether or not this would happen. We found at least one case where they consider it, didn't necessarily prohibit an ordinance like this, but it didn't not prohibit it either. So, yeah, with that, I don't know if there's particular questions about some of the details.
Amy?
I do have a question. Have we sort of inventoried how many potential properties this would affect?
Yeah, there was a Janus report done several years, many years ago, I guess.
What
and
report's that?
It was called the Janus report. Janus is the name of the company that did the report. They did that for the board. They came up with 300 and some properties. I tried to determine where that number stood based on some of the meeting minutes and stuff like that. It seems like the board might have whittled down a suggested amount of properties for that list to somewhere in the 200s, but I couldn't. They didn't.
So it's
give
substantial. It's not.
It
Just a
is,
few.
yes.
And you would not do this. I mean, the council would not determine that they were a recognized city historic resource until somebody tried to do something to the property, or would you do it a priori?
No, this would be a list that they would maintain all the time. I mean,
So council, if this were passed, then the council would initiate this process and we would recognize those 300 or something? No?
it wouldn't be council, it would be the Historic Preservation Board.
But
That
wouldn't
would-
we have to approve that even if they gave the list or no?
Okay, the way I understand the ordinance and the more details, this is just a high level. When you become a designated property as a historic preservation, there is a demolition delay on the property, and you do have to go through processes. What is being suggested by Councilman Gibson is to have a demolition delay requirement for properties that did not obtain designation. When we looked at this issue in the past, we did try to reduce the amount of properties that are under consideration, because age alone does not necessarily make a house something that would meet historic criteria. And even so, what would be historic in Bonita Springs compared to your home state, where houses are a couple hundred years old, it's not something that's very common. The city that seems to be kind of in the forefront of this is St. Augustine. And of course, that city is 400 years old. So they would have some reason to maybe have a demolition delay above and beyond what is in the ordinance for designated properties. What would happen is the city community development department, upon enactment of an ordinance like this, would put in the GIS system any homes. They would red tag the process, so that if somebody later on came in for a demolition permit, normally a permit that gets passed within a day or so, it gets reviewed, make sure electrical, fire, everybody's ready to do the demolition. Instead, that property would be tagged automatically as property that we need to look at, to analyze, to determine whether or not it is historic. And the delay could be up to 90 days, I think. And during that 90 days, it would go to the Historic Designation Board, and they'd determine whether or not there was salvageability of anything on the property. I don't think that there was a decision where we would actually want the property ourselves, because that would definitely be a taking. But it would be something where the property owner would be able to maybe contact barnyard builder type groups that could salvage any material. So it's not just put into the demolition and thrown away for good. That delay would just be for that short period, and it would be able to analyze. And then if it was something that was very critical, instead of course, allowing the demolition to go forward, there might be additional actions, depending on the value.
I mean, it creates a time buffer zone,
Correct.
which I think is very important.
But the people would be able to know if they're at least flagged, right? There'd be some information transferred to the.
There would be a list, at least as the revisions were written, there would be a list that the board would be responsible for maintaining.
But they
a
wouldn't.
public list.
But unless the Historic Preservation Board looked at every one of them, we wouldn't know whether it was.
Yeah, the property owner
really-
might not know unless they'd looked at until they go
Oh,
to.
and it might not really be a recognized asset anyway, if the, right? Just because it's 50 years old or it's flagged.
Well, there's good, if it's on the list, then the board has seen it as a recognized asset.
So they don't have to go through the board then?
No,
It's already been done, is what you're saying?
they would still have to come to the board, and the board could make the decision whether or not to issue a delay, but there is a list that the board maintains. And that's prior to asking for a demolition permit.
Here's where some of the concerns are from a legal perspective. Again, it's something that's legally possible for council to go forward with a demolition delay. But some of the concerns is if I was somebody moving to Bonita Springs, people buy homes that we sometimes colorfully call tear downs. Okay? So if you move to generally Bonita Beach area, Imperial Shores, there's lots of houses there that are tear downs, in addition to houses in downtown Bonita Springs. Generally, people close on the property. This is not something that would be in the recording of the property, so there's no cloud on title, but it's not a record thing. So sometimes there may be purchasers who are not aware that the house has now been added to that list due to its age, the current tear down. Generally, people go and have their house engineered or architecturally designed. They're ready to start their beach home or whatever new house. They go to the building department, and surprise, surprise, that's when they realize, because again, the letter that might have gone out to a prior owner who may have been one or two owners earlier, and isn't aware that the property they bought has this encumberment as far as having a delay, and whether a 3-month delay or up to 3 months, because hopefully we'd process it faster, if it creates an inordinate burden on that property owner, because generally you don't go and pull your demolition permit until you're ready to build a house. That's where you may have some people either legally upset and then filing legal challenges against the city, generally under a Bert Harris type claim as an inordinate, does the ordinance create an inordinate burden as applied, or alternatively, they just get really, really angry and yell at the city manager. And me.
Can I make a suggestion, picking up on some of this? I'd be for looking at it if we had, one, clear standards. So it's clear what the standards are. And it sounds like those exist, Alex. Secondly, I think it's important that the property owner, the current property owner, be told and be involved at the beginning, not later. In other words, we're thinking about putting your house, it's like historic designation in New York, which obviously is far more burdensome. You can't do anything, all right? But we're thinking about putting your property on this, and tell them and give them an advance notice of that, and give them time to interact with the board, rather than, oh, well, the board put you on a list, by the way, and now you can appeal it. And I guess the third thing is addressing the point you just made about when houses are sold. There must be a way, Audrey, in other places where we could look to. I mean, for example, in New York, right, if you have problems, forget about a 90-day delay, you can't change certain buildings. There must be a process in place in places where buildings are sold, where that notice is clear. I don't know what it is,
Right.
but I'd be
Northampton, New Hampshire. for
But
another
yeah, I'd be
example,
shocked
you
if
want
it didn't exist. So those are my points. I don't.
No, and I don't disagree. I think
Okay.
where there is a great real estate attorney, they're going to be counseled and they'll realize, but a lot of transactions are done where people might not necessarily know everything. I'm just pointing it out
Yep.
to you.
I
Right,
appreciate
and all I'm
that.
suggesting is let's find out
We will.
how it
Yeah,
works
why couldn't we
elsewhere.
put it on the property appraiser's report?
Right.
Whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Every building permit's put on there.
Yeah.
Why can't we put that?
Any more discussion, council?
Yeah, well, basically, I'd like to see this get moved forward, have it go back before the Historic Preservation Board, have them bring forward that list. And same thing, whittle it down, because like you said, just because it's 50 years old doesn't make it historic. You know, whether it be in traditional Florida cracker design, you know, different things like that. And then, you know, see what we can do to help protect them.
I'll make that motion.
I second. What's your motion?
Motion and a second.
Either way.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Great. Okay, Fred, we're now on to our rata sheet number 1, which is actually mine. How about that? You're gonna have to wait for your errata sheets. Coming up, though. This is an add-on to Agenda Item 8, folks, and what this is, and I'm going to read it quickly so everybody knows what we're talking about here. This is a letter that I would sign and send on behalf of council to the Lee County Tourist Development Council in Fort Myers regarding the Everglades Wonder Gardens marketing grant request. Dear TDC members, this is an exciting time for South Lee County, and in particular for the city of Bonita Springs, as we start to see the results of our multi-million-dollar downtown redevelopment project. Our vision includes a walkable Main Street downtown, and the Everglades Wonder Gardens will continue to serve as an anchor to draw visitors to the area. The Everglades Wonder Gardens celebrated its 80th anniversary this year and has recently been designated as a historical resource to the city of Bonita Springs. As a tourist and local destination, the Everglades Wonder Gardens contributes to the business community. The city of Bonita Springs has invested in the newly formed not-for-profit Bonita Wonder Gardens Incorporated ownership of the historic property by providing a $3.5 million loan for the purchase of the Wonder Gardens. The first payment will be made June 1st, 2016, which obviously it was this evening. We believe in the board of directors, the management, the staff, and volunteers. We have witnessed the continued improvements to the property over the past year and have every confidence that this will continue. We sincerely encourage you to support their marketing efforts as well, knowing that your investment in the Everglades Wonder Gardens is an investment in the entire Bonita Springs and South Lee County community. Sincerely, Peter Simmons, Mayor. So that's what we're talking about, folks, here. Any other discussion or questions?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Great.
I guess I'll make the motion to accept, if that's all right. Mike will second it. Further discussion? Roll call.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Errata sheet number 2, Fred. You're up, buddy. This is a proposal to request the city council support an amendment to expand the scope of a regional water compact.
Right.
Fred Forbes.
If you remember about 3 meetings or so ago, I briefed council on a meeting that I'd had with Representative Christina Jacobs from Broward County, and her willingness to help us get into the water better than we already are. At the same time, about a week after that, after I briefed you, I became aware, and she became more aware of the effort that's going on within Lee County by the mayors that was started under the previous mayor and the other mayors on basically cleaning up the watershed at the Caloosahatchee River. I hope I've pronounced that correctly.
Caloosahatchee.
Well, okay, I'll go with your pronunciation. How's that? Now, we have 5 other major watersheds in Lee County than just that one. And so and I've talked to her, and she said that effort, which they're working on as well, could be adopted, and the right way to do it would be to have a mayor that's in that group. There's one sitting here tonight, I think.
Where is he? Or
I
she?
think he's right there.
All right.
So anyway, have him present it, and I've written this up. I got a lot of the technical information from Jim Beavers.
Beaver?
Right, yeah, Beaver. And also, I gathered some inputs from some local people, and it's very short, especially for me. And it's basically just saying we want you to include these other watersheds in your alliance for cleaning up, and it protects the water that we have. It helps flooding, it helps reduce pollution, and it actually helps our beaches out, all of which is good. It really, it's that simple. And however, if any of you have an input that you feel should be added to this, or you find a typo or something else, if you will give it to Carl, then he'll take the editable file and have it corrected. But that would be, that's what I'm proposing.
The only quick question I have, Fred, is I think it's a great idea, but you're also adding Hendry Creek, Mullock Creek, et cetera?
Yes, uh-huh.
Why? Just to be complete? I mean,
Just to be complete.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
Great. No, Fred, I think this is fantastic. I did meet the representative a few weeks ago, along with you. Certainly a commitment and a dedication to the mayors in this area, and I think probably other areas, but certainly in Southwest Florida. So I think this is fantastic and support it wholeheartedly. And I'll make sure I get my typos to Carl.
Okay.
All right?
So do I need to make a motion to the effect that we adopt this?
Audrey,
Or
Carl,
ask
yes,
you?
I would say, yes.
Okay. I make a motion that we request our mayor to move forward and advocate this to the group of mayors that are in an alliance on this project.
Great, I'll second that. Any further discussion?
That's great.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Great, thank you, Fred.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask an indulgence on something?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
Peter,
which
go
is,
ahead.
I'd like to chat about Tigris only because we have our residents sitting here for 2.5 hours. I know it would normally come up, I guess, at the very end, but.
Sure, I mean, that's fine by me. Council, is that all right?
I agree. I was
Sure.
gonna
No,
see if you wanted to
absolutely.
bring
Good,
it up.
very good
Yeah.
point,
Second
Peter.
time they've been
So,
here,
Very good point.
This relates to the CIP, and I would have had a sheet on this, but it just evolved this afternoon. When you go back, staff was, excuse me, asked to do an awful lot of work very quickly, Ann and Carl, the whole group, with respect to the CIP. Tons of data they put together very efficiently, as we all know, a month or two ago. And when it came to the unpaved, and if you remember, our standard there was that if we had contracts in place, we were not going to undo or upset those contracts. It was just looking forward. And there was so much going on, and what we ended up being presented with respect to unpaved streets was that there were no active projects, which is, totally understandable because of everything else going on. It turned out that when Assistant City Manager Gucciardo was here, he had been working with them, and they had, I saw it today, a signed contract from the contractor November 15th. And so my view of it is that if we had known that then, we would have said, under the standard we adopted at the time, go ahead with that contract. It was for $22,000 for Tigris, and our share was 80% of it. My notion, if council is amenable, I hope you would be, considering that history, to go ahead and allow that and give direction to Carl. So that's.
Can I make a comment on it?
Yes, Fred.
I'm not opposed to this, but I have 2 or 3 concerns. Number one, this is for a 16-foot wide street. And you asked Matt, it should be a 20. And when you put a street in that narrow and the big trucks, trash trucks, whatever, fire trucks, if they go down a 16-foot wide street and the vehicle's coming the other way, that truck, that heavy truck, is going to be right at the edge of the street. And what that will cause is a premature failure of the blacktop. It fails from the edge in. That heavy weight right at the edge will break it down. So we ought to go back and get the contract fixed to go to 20 feet, number one. And number two, and you may not all agree with this, but if we're going to put money in this deal, we want an easement to make sure there's utility easements, and my understanding from Matt is that there was not, and that doesn't cost the owners anything. But that way, down the road, it can be done. So I would support it. It may cost us a few more dollars, but I'd rather see a 20-foot road than a 16. A 16-foot is a width of a residential 2-car garage driveway.
Is Matt around? Yeah. I just wonder what we did on the other roads.
And what's the ordinance say? Didn't we create an ordinance?
See, I can answer part of that because I talked to Matt about this.
Here he comes.
Quit messing around out there, Feeney. You got questions.
The other roads were all paved, done by the city specs.
Right.
And so they were 20-footers.
Fred's raising the issue of 16 feet versus 20 on
16.
Tiger.
Oh.
and saying that at 16, the trucks could chip away at the side and cause premature failure. I'm just wondering what they are on the other streets that we did. Do you know offhand?
Yes, we're referring to unpaved roads. I apologize.
yes.
Matt Feeney for the record.
Yeah.
The typical unpaved road project that we did 3 iterations of it.
Right.
It was 20 feet was the standard. Now that being said, there were some streets, because we were essentially utilizing the existing road bed that was made out of shell material or whatever the residents had. There were some cases where we actually were not able to construct a full 20 feet. The most prominent example is Somerset Lane, which is just behind Ace Hardware. There's an area where there were some full-grown pine trees. There was no existing road bed. And so I don't know the exact width, but it narrows considerably. But we typically try to do 20 feet. If the road we're talking about is Tigress Lane, is that what you're...
Yes.
I drove it recently, and you have a similar situation out there. You have a very it's a short area that's looking to be paved, but you have a wide puddle, and then the existing asphalt that you would tie into is not 20 feet.
Oh.
It's narrower, so that's probably the why.
Okay.
And yes, you're absolutely right. Trucks can bite off the edge of the asphalt at the narrower you
Well,
get.
if it's, why don't we just go with what they want then, Fred?
Yeah.
Well, what about the easements?
Well, the easement is what? It's just an easement, isn't it?
Yeah, but we don't agree to it contingent on them giving the city the easements for utilities.
Was it the city, or are you talking to
I'll make the
BSU?
motion. We approve it, subject to them being willing to grant the easements for
All right,
future utilities.
This is a partially paved street already, as Matt just said. So if you get the easements granted, it's only going to be for the properties involved
Yeah,
in this paving,
right,
which is only one end of the street.
yeah,
Okay?
understood.
As long as
But
council's
the
aware.
easement does not involve any action other than writing on a piece of paper that they have an easement, right? We're not talking about doing anything with the
No.
easement.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a piece of paper.
Could we hear from the neighbors? Are they have any? You don't have to, but I just.
One of us had to leave. Her
Yeah,
mother
yeah.
was here and being somewhat disruptive, so I apologize for that. Thank you for addressing this and taking the time.
Absolutely.
We need you to speak in the microphone.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Are you okay with this easement that Fred is talking about?
I don't quite understand, if the easement means, does that mean that if there's ever water in that area that we're agreeing to pay the city the water assessment and things like that? Is that
No, I
what the
don't think
easement?
If, all it means is if the easement's there and BSU wants to
Yeah,
extend the
microphone,
sewer.
Fred, sorry.
What it means is if the easement is already granted, if BSU wanted to extend water or sewer lines down there, I imagine you have water, but it's
No,
whatever
we
you don't have. If they want to do it, they don't have to come and negotiate with each one of you to get
Right.
a signed piece of paper. And my feeling is if we're going to pay 80% of the bill, that's like almost 101.
Okay, I think that's fair.
The only thing I would point out is that with all the other cases that you did support a 80% payment, I don't believe that they had to pay, agree with the assessment.
I'm well
of the
aware of
easement.
that.
Audrey?
Yeah, two things. One is the clerk needs you to state your name in the record so the minutes actually reflect the correct name. Then I'm going to talk on the easement issue.
Okay. Kathy Petit, and I'm at 10451 Tigress Lane.
And that's Petite?
Petit, P-E-D-I-T.
Okay.
Thank you.
This one will be Teresa Bubin, that's B-U-B-I-N, 10401 Tigress Lane.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Audrey?
When we started the unpaved program, one of the main goals or the concerns that the city had was the city did not want to be in a situation where the road would become publicly maintained under this project. So it's an overlay type project. It's not intended to make it a city road. So the documents we have are licenses to enter onto the property. I don't think that the documents we have for this program are sufficient for BSU, but generally people, when they negotiate with BSU, they just give them the easement because they want water or sewer. But there is the concern that if we enter into a proper easement, which we can do, of course, then you're in a situation where you're now making this a public road.
Oh.
I don't think so. An easement doesn't doesn't make it a public road. We've got all kind of roads in Hunter's Ridge. We got utility easements running down
Correct.
the side of them, and they are not public roads.
So
We
we
have
would
to
have
move-
an easement, but we'd maintain the private aspect of the road.
I think all Fred
And we
seems to
understand
be,
it's an
if
overlay.
I
Yeah.
might, I think,
And,
oh, sorry.
and the reason I want the easement is if, let's suppose on that road, there's a couple property owners that want sewer and water, and the one at at the end closest to the sewer don't want it, then he or she can hold them up. And all I'm saying is if we're gonna put this much of public money, at least that's nothing. It isn't gonna cost them anything.
Okay.
This portion of the road does include 4 property owners, and 3 of us were here tonight. The other one's just being newly constructed.
Okay,
We got the brain trust to work.
great. Anything else, Audrey? Jay? Carl?
I do have pictures if it's helpful at all.
We're still having issues because, again, the type of, this particular project where we commit the 80%, it was never intended to bring the roads up to current city code requirements.
All right.
And if you start doing some of this, you're creating a liability concern, is my, you know.
Let me make a suggestion. Well, Fred, you have a motion on the table. Was it
Yeah,
seconded?
Yeah, I have and I made the motion that we approve it,
Amendment,
subject to the
friendly
property owners
amendment.
granting an easement, which we can transfer
I
to.
suggest an amendment,
Okay.
yeah, which is, if council is willing to go ahead with the original thing at the 16 feet. And let's just have Audrey look into this.
Right, and we can
you know.
change the license that it will have a
Yeah.
for utilities only an easement.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Fred. I mean, basically, all I hear him saying is that it would be to everybody's benefit. It would not be to the detriment of,
Sure.
of our neighbors here, that if BSU wanted to go in and provide water and sewer, they wouldn't have to negotiate because the road happened to be paved.
There'll be a
I
utilities
mean,
easement
that
there.
seems pretty straightforward, but if you wanted to double check it.
But I don't want to, but if one person comes back and says, no, I
Right.
don't want to sign it, now what are you going to do?
Well, I think some of it is that, as Councilman O'Flynn talked about, they've been waiting for this since November. Had we not done anything, had they been diligent in November, this would be a moot issue.
Right.
Well, and I would
Right.
agree with
That's
that,
a fair
but the
point.
others we should have been getting these things all this time.
But it's not in the ordinance, that's the poor problem. It was never
It has
written
nothing to
in.
do with the ordinance. If you're paying 80% of the road, the city is entitled to something, I believe, and I think that something ought to be that we get an easement for.
Well, I made my
utilities.
motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we are running
I
into the
didn't-
rainy season
Oh,
too.
no, I'm
so-
sorry, Fred.
Oh, no, well,
What are we voting
I
on?
think by
let's-
Robert's,
let's-
well, we're
let's-
voting. I
let's-
made I could withdraw my motion if you want to vote
No,
on it.
we amended it.
You can't amend a motion
Voting on.
Okay,
without
sorry.
voting on it. Well, you can,
You can amend
vote
the
on it.
motion and vote on the motion to see if the motion.
Vote on the amendment first.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
So the amendment, to be clear, is to go ahead with what was originally intended, with a preference to having an easement, but for safety's sake, have Audrey quickly check and see if that implicates anything. An easement doesn't cost the property owners a nickel.
Right, yeah, it's not a money issue, this,
Right.
not a money issue.
Right.
Reality issue
Yeah,
about it.
I don't understand.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already had that issue, actually. We actually had the mandate to bring water in, and we had two of our neighbors up on the upper end of the road did not want it to happen, and so therefore it was niched. I mean, my neighbor across the street and we would have been perfectly happy to have water, but.
But this doesn't solve it though either.
Right.
But it
So
doesn't give
it's
them
one of
leverage.
those, all or none, everybody has to vote on it, and it's one of those things, even with the easements being there, it has to be a vote of all the neighbors wanting it congruently in order to have that get done.
Right.
So
My
is
other
that-
concern is we're in the rainy season, and this was a picture from last year. We had no egress on that whole roadway, and the time is getting to the monsoon season once again, and just a little concerned about if we, don't get this to
Okay.
go forward, where we're going to
Are we good?
Two things. One is for Tigris, the road's Tigris, to go forward with the project with the preference to also obtain easements for utilities only on the parcels affected, so that we do that as a condition
Yeah,
of
where
the
the
project.
paving is, where the
Of
paving
making
is.
the 80%. And then the other thing is, if the road is to the point that it's emergency and it needs ingress and egress, you don't need to go through this program. There's the Attorney General opinion that allows improvements to roads for emergency purposes.
I mean, there's no way a car could have gotten down that. I mean, there's just none, and
Okay.
that's my front yard that the water's up in,
Yep.
so.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second on the amendment.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Fred.
Okay.
Discussion.
Audrey, the way the amendment is written, if one person doesn't want to sign the easement, then we're still going to be doing the road, right?
Yes. All
Then
right,
I'm voting
I'm
no.
watching startled look here. Okay, so let me go back to the preface of what was this project and what was the origination of this project. And this project wasn't to go in and create a whole bunch of city road systems. That was one of our biggest concerns. But we did find a need to improve certain roads if the people signed a license allowing us, one, the permission to go on the property, but two, understanding this was a one-time improvement of the city placing overlay. It was not something where the city was gonna incur the liability or the responsibility for continuing on with it. What I would be doing is amending the license agreement to make it a license, to allow us still the city permission to go on the property, to do the road improvement, which is a one-time now I'm watching.
No,
No, it's
no.
changed.
It's, the
No.
program's changed.
Right.
Right now,
They're doing
what
it.
happens under the new program is that, and the owners have done this, under the new program, they go out, find a contractor to provide a proposal,
We
which
just
they've
pay the
done.
invoice.
Okay, and they give us those invoices, which are those proposals. We check them for reasonableness, and then we give them, if we're okay with that, we give them the go-ahead. They contract with the contractor, so the city's not going in there. And then they pay their 20%. We pay our 80% directly to the contractor, and then we're done. So that's kind of how it works now. So we don't need to get licenses to go in on the property or anything like that. We
Okay.
will have the additional paperwork of the easements at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a 2-year process, so there was Plan A and Plan B.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Been a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Carl.
one more point for the record, I'm sorry. And that is, if you saw the pictures, you could see there's a considerable amount of water in the street. And I just want to make it clear to the owners, as well as to the council, that we are not fixing unfortunate stormwater problems, okay? We are simply creating a road where it doesn't exist.
Correct.
Is what we're
And you're
doing.
above it,
We-
yeah.
we got
You're-
that.
Great.
Okay.
You're above it, it's drivable.
Yeah, I don't
One-
care if it's on the sides, but you can't get through your
Wonderful.
driveway.
Thank you very much. There's a motion
you
and a
for your time.
second.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt,
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
No.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, we're now moving on to the second, item 9, second reading and public hearing of the following ordinance, and we are allowing public comment. Audrey.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs amending the construction contractor ordinance, section 12-33, to delete fee requirements per Florida statutes, section 553.80, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, inclusion in code, and an effective date. This is the second reading of the, and final reading of the ordinance. The ordinance history is outlined in the green sheet. I do have the affidavit of publication, and it is legally sufficient and also on file with the city clerk. The ordinance has been explained to council. I don't know if you want a summary of it tonight, but otherwise, it's just to meet state requirements that we are not allowed to charge state registered and state licensed contractors a fee for registering with the city. We still are going to require registration because it's in the public purpose to do so.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion?
No.
Okay. No discussion. Roll call, please.
Mayor
Public
Simmons.
comment.
Oh,
I apologize. I apologize. Public comment first. Okay, seeing none. Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons.
I guess,
No, public comment on this. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Okay, item 11, Audrey.
10.
And
Public comment.
Now we have public comment.
Public comment on any matter, is it?
All righty. Item 10, public comment. Now come on up, folks. Martha, or sir? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good
Mr.
evening.
Mayor, City Council, City Manager, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard, for the record, Richard L. Barber, B-A-R-B-E-R, 9751 Connecticut Street here in Bonita Springs. For those who don't know me, in the past year, this is my third trip to the podium since City Council has been established. The first two trips, all three trips could be considered selfless. The first trip was for the improper closing of the YMCA, fighting that battle, and then the celebrated reopening, assisting Fred Forbes in that time. Second trip here, your City Council archives will show a petition on file stopping or trying to stop a sidewalk that was proposed to be constructed along Wisconsin Street here in Bonita Springs from Bonita Beach Road to Pennsylvania Avenue. That, I imagine, had worked because the sidewalk was aborted and it was then built on Michigan Street. So be it. Michigan Street is a mere 10 lots away from Wisconsin Street. I am a 44-year resident of Bonita Springs, although I don't sound like it, I'm sure. But I've been living on 9751 Connecticut Street since I built that house in '78. In 1978, I began my efforts to help be a proponent and a ramrod of that community, Pendel Park, Villa Bonita 2 and whatnot, to keep those properties nice, to keep the neighborhood safe and whatnot. I understand now that the drums are starting to beat again for a sidewalk in that area. I understand there may or may not be a HUD grant available and being in use for sidewalks in and around the Kentucky Street area from Old 41 to Wisconsin Street, which will dead end, I'm told, at Wisconsin Street. That being said, if that be true, knowing with my 60 years on this earth, I know how things might operate. And once the sidewalk is dead-ended into Wisconsin Street, the next move for someone to make is to possibly extend the sidewalk from Bonita Beach Road to Pennsylvania Avenue, again mirroring what's on Michigan Street. My position with that is that we already have miles of sidewalk in place, a network. With Michigan Street extends from Beach Road to Pennsylvania. It circles around, sidewalk circles around to Old 41 back to Michigan to the east. To the west, it goes down Pennsylvania to Royal Road, around, and back, hooks into Beach Road, back east to Michigan. It's a done deal. It's there. My position is that when and if anything is considered to be constructed in the future, to please avoid the use of Wisconsin Street. I gave your employee Connie DeBruno copies of a good-sized petition that we have signed, residents of Wisconsin Street, Kentucky Street, Connecticut Street, and in turn Delaware Street, to avoid the use of this area for a sidewalk. And I'd like that to be considered. Our neighborhood is nice, our neighborhood is kept well. Wisconsin's a fast road. Lee County Sheriff's Department does its bit to set up shop there regularly to stop speeders. We do not need to encourage any additional people on Wisconsin Street, sidewalk or not. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Sure.
Richard, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
It's Wisconsin specifically where you have the issue?
Wisconsin Street is specifically where I have the issue.
Okay.
My position, real quick, on my way out, is if there's that kind of money to continue to pour concrete 10 lots apart to mirror what we already have, we might want to consider giving a little more money to places like Cafe of Life, where people have less than the basics for their needs to live. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening. First of all, I want to congratulate you. It took 10 years, but you're moving forward on that demolition delay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. Unanimous vote. Yay. I can't even believe it. I called Charlie straight. He's like, can you believe it? I'm like, oh my God. And Mike brought it forward. So, yay, team. That's amazing. I understand Lee County has the same ordinance pretty much, and they used it one time, okay, on the Mound House. That's an important asset. So it's not like, you're going to be jamming this down people's throats, right? Okay. Number 2, Memorial Day, solemn, respectful, honorable. Thank you for being there, and thank you for putting it on. Awesome. Sorry, Steve Slatka couldn't be here, but it was a wonderful remembrance for our veterans. And the unpaved road program, please go back to how it was, because you're going to have more people coming in like that. One of the problems, I'm sorry, Carl, one of the problems was that people, like on our street for 30 years, they fought about who's going to take the money, where we're going to put the money, because like 35 years ago, somebody raised $300. That's how much it was going to cost to pave our road, and they took off with it. $300. We could have saved us a lot of money. So, but really, I have a feeling you're probably going to have more people come forward, and I have the probably bizarre opinion that actually a lot of these roads are really public roads, and they're not really private roads. For instance, like my road, there's nowhere in my deed that says I own my road. It was just abandoned by a developer is what happened. And so I really think that we should just, hey, bite the bullet, take them on, let's have a beautiful town and improve it in every way. And the last thing, thank you for what's happening over on Royal Pond. The trees are going with 2 beautiful, magnificent palms went in today, kind of as a, a gateway into the pond area. It's really going to look great when those things come in. Thank for the rain today, Yeah, I know you didn't have anything to do with that, but if you did, thanks. Anyhow, very beautiful. And the last, lions. Contact them. I know they have an opinion about this, but people couldn't get here today. So, good job, folks.
Great.
Demolition delay. Right on, Mike.
Thank you, Martha.
Okay.
Good evening.
Thank you. Jean Bear again with the Local Roots Farmers Markets. And I apologize when I came up before. I guess I should have talked a little bit more about what our intention was in being here this evening. I do want to point out that Betsy and I are both Lee County residents and have really enjoyed being a part of the Bonita Springs community. So I would hope that at some point we would no longer be considered outsiders, but a part of this community. We are residents here in Lee County. We did meet with the Lions Club. We had a great meeting with the Lions Club at the city's request. We talked about being involved with them in a variety of fundraisers, farm-to-table dinner, allowing them to come to the farmers market, maybe doing an admission fee, setting up a booth, doing a variety of things, and they felt that the climate was such that they had a declining number of volunteers and they were going to continue to do the projects that they were doing. But it was a great meeting. It ended very good. They thanked us. We talked about how the whole atmosphere of farmers markets has changed here in Lee County and throughout the entire nation. We have over 20 here in Lee County markets. Some are called flea markets, some are called farmers markets, green markets. They're called based on how the cities and the counties write their ordinances. So it's changed. Vendors used to treat farmers markets, and when the Lions Clubs did it, a lot of them it was a hobby. Lady made great cookies. She thought it was a good place to come out. Now it's a very viable place where people come, and this is their income. We have a young couple here in Bonita, Amanda and Richard. She makes soy candles. She's built a terrific business out of soy candles, so much so that now she wants to get into a food booth, and her husband's going to be leaving his job, and he's going to be coming up with a food business, and they live here in Bonita. That money is going to stay in your community, and that's what Betsy and I do. We take great pride at helping young entrepreneurs be able to develop businesses so that money can stay in the communities, and we've been able to do that with over 50 small businesses here in Lee County alone, many of which live here in Bonita. I want to point out that the Promenade chose us to treat the farmers market as a business. The vendors expect that because, again, it's not a hobby for them anymore, it's a business. And we treat it as a business. We don't rely on volunteers to come out and do it. We advertise in papers, we set up a website, we put flyers throughout the community, all to drive people to the Promenade, which has helped the businesses there, and to drive people to the market, which has helped these small businesses. I know, Mayor, you've been at the market and have been very complimentary of what we've tried to do, and I would hope that the city of Bonita would say, hey, we want a good quality farmer's market, not a venue for a non-for-profit to raise money. You want a good farmer's market here in Bonita, and I believe that Betsy and I have been able to do that for you for the last couple of years. All of our spots are full. We're on Saturdays. The Lions Club are on Saturdays, and they chose to come with local roots, and we were proud of that. Even Farmer Mike that you talk about has come with local roots. The only reason we applied for the flea market ordinance, the one that you wrote, is so that we could allow non-for-profits to come and be with us. We would like the Lions Club to have a booth there. The green market ordinance doesn't allow for that. The flea market does. It's not our intention to sell used books and to sell hats. We gave you a packet. In the packet, it outlines all the vendors that we have. Your flea market ordinance also allows for people to eat at the market. The green market doesn't, and many people want to eat when they're at the market. They want to get maybe some sushi and walk around with some sushi or a chicken leg. And we can only allow that by having the flea market. So I guess my question to you, we could also have the Blue Zone. You talked today, here you had a meeting, how excited Bonita is to have the Blue Zone. You then, I would hope, would want a good quality farmer's market so that we could allow the Blue Zone to be there. Could I just have one more minute?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm trying not to ramble and to be concise. I'm almost done. But by granting us a flea market ordinance, it will allow organizations like the Blue Zone to be there and to have a booth and to be able to share their mission. The green market ordinance does not allow for that. The city staff is comfortable, I believe, in working with Betsy and I. We have a wonderful relationship with us, so much so that they did advise the council to please consider passing and allowing us to have the permit. You wrote the ordinance. We have followed the rules. We did not believe there to be a conflict with the Lions Club because they haven't applied. The Lions Club has not applied to operate a farmer's market. So we thought we were operating within the guidelines, again, in summary, that we could bring a good quality farmer's market. And my only question to you as council is, I guess I'm confused, is it that you don't want us operating a flea market or that you don't want a market? Because we have approval of the promenade, we have the support of the staff, we operate within the guidelines of the ordinance that you all drafted, which Mr. DeWitt, you pointed out, we're operating within the guidelines you set forth. So I'm confused as to what to bring back to you at the next meeting. We've shown you our vendors, we've applied under your guidelines, the Lions Club has not applied for a permit. So if somebody could please clarify, we'll be more than happy to come back and do a better job. Is it the flea market that you're opposed to?
Why
the
don't you work
farmer's
on
market?
that with staff, okay?
Work on what?
Work on what your question is.
But they are in favor of what we're doing. I don't know what more we would go back and ask them.
This is public comment. This is not discussion with council.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Alan Glazier. I just wanted to thank you all for moving forward, especially Mike, and about the demolition delay. One thing, I think one of the reasons that the Historic Preservation Board basically, if you want to say dropped it, it really wasn't dropped. We were just asked about certain things that we needed to bring forward and didn't have the support of the council at the time, so we just kind of let go. But I think the board is really in favor of it, and so I appreciate that and want to work with you all on that. There are things that I want to mention about the water tower. One of the things that I'm concerned with is that we locate the time capsule that we moved in '88 that was underneath the old water tower, in just to make sure. I'm not sure that it's not located, and of course maybe we don't want to let everybody in town know where it is, but it just, you know, whatever. I just like to make sure that
that is being taken care of and being maintained, so it's not sitting in water or whatever we can do about that. So I'd like to make sure of that, and appreciate y'all bringing that forward. One question I do have is, do we not have people that work for the city that maintains these things? Do we always have to farm this out and hire people to do these things that can be done by a carpenter? I really love the plan. The ideas that I had in mind as far as the elastomeric coating, the roofing. Of course, we don't want it to hold water because that's not going to do any good, but I really appreciate the pictures that Nicole and Arlene and Carl brought forward, and so I appreciate those. And having worked on historic structures myself in construction and seen the top plate that the roof would sit on and the base and like that, it looks good to me. So I'm really glad that we're moving forward with this. So I hope that we can get something that's going to stand for years, and our city will be proud of it. And the other thing that Alex Grant brought forward at our meeting, I think was really important. I hope it's all right for me to talk about these things from our meeting. I think it is, but was that use it as a teaching tool, and that maybe we can have something like that come from this. And of course, it's real. And if we have a roof on there, doesn't necessarily have to reflect exactly what the original one was. And it might be better to maybe, I'm thinking, excuse me, to go like with the Lyle's Hotel look or something like that. But we have shutters out there that could blow off in a storm. So anyways, appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan. Public comment, anybody else? Hello, Kathy.
Good evening. For the record, Kathy McGrath. First of all, Carl, I personally want to thank you so much. 5 years have gone by so fast. And you and Brenda put down your roots here, and I know you want to stay here. You don't want to go back to Cape Coral. So just keep on doing the job you're doing now. And the Wonder Gardens, oh, I never had a doubt, but it was so exciting to see them all here and presenting it, because I'm not on the board. I am a volunteer. I'm there a lot. And Trish and the whole board, they're wonderful. And I have to, of course, mention my good friend Janet, because she's done such an awesome job, and she has such a great team of workers there. I mean, if people watching, if you haven't been there, you really should go back and see it, because it is great. I'm glad to see it looks like a solution for the water tower. That's positive. And I had the opportunity, this is about the high school and the location, which of course, you know, Shangri-La, and that's been controversial, but I had the opportunity to speak in person to one of the school board members last week, and I was told that that location is not a dead issue, and it doesn't have anything to do with this so-called diesel spill. I don't know if anyone realizes, I believe it's a 9 square foot diesel spill, which I'm told anytime you have equipment somewhere and all, that's going to happen. That's going to be taken care of, just like the asbestos was blown way out of proportion. I think there's a group of people here that are jumping on anything that might deter it from being there. But the problem is just the owner right now is owners are sitting on their hands and they just aren't negotiating. But the school board is actively still pursuing that. They still feel that is the best location. So let's hope for that. And the downtown Bonita, you know what a supporter I've been of that, and I'm really was pleased to hear about this new lower cost possibly for the bridge. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I think if you can make it safe and aesthetically attractive and still take care of the pedestrians and everything, let's go for it. And as far as the roundabouts are concerned, I wish people would stop comparing them to the circles, the traffic circles that they remember back home up north, because they are not the same thing. They're much smaller. As a matter of fact, looking at this roundabout that was presented tonight, I don't think it's even as big as the one that's up at Williams Road, and I think it's really going to work real well. I'm excited about it. And, well, we're looking forward to 4th of July, and the service the other day was beautiful, the memorial service. Thanks to everyone, and thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to.
Could we have a break?
Stand up.
Okay, 5-minute break.
Thank you.
That's a good.
Sorry.
Need a five.